Albert Einstein su adum oi ngasagi magi mathematics ki kano se hairaga language delay se aduduna kari area da delay laige haibase si su pasiti na daba haina sinbana taba moi masana choose tauza hanba maram di moi gi same age group se magi gifted oi banina khitang mangonda punba matamda disencourage oi ba laigani aduduna mana yengaga khanhan base darkar tai aduga akoina honest oibiba mangonda yauriba ability se talent se kaino haibase mangonda explain tawbiba machangi aduga akoina grade se skip tawraga hena kakhat hanba na hai ado grade skip tawbase overall functioning da gifted oiragadi kashu kaide adubu particular subject amada oitaragadi angang duda hena social adjustment emotional adudagidi academically deteriorate tawrakani aduduna yengbi batai akoigi angang se specially karamba subject no natragana fully proper area sida loina oibra haibase aduga akoina si accelerate tawba matamda natraga grade skip tawbasi su kanabase pi academic satisfaction laihali adudagidi akoigi intellectual pair do lairabanina moigi performance se better oirai adudagi reduce behavior problems isu reduce lai adubo same thing akoina disadvantage se amuk lai emotionally unprepared oibana maram oiraga ngasagi adjust tawbada waba environment duda adudai bullying se toina thengnai adudagi unexpected challenges sina akoi frustration gumba aduna akoina yari makai angang ama gifted oibra talented oibra haibase khangtok minase hairagadi first initial stage se teacher and parents ni aduga moigi matungina akoigi chanaba mafamda pubiraga yengbiba se darkar tai si hairaga ai lotion jarage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sangeeta. So now I invite M. Indira Devi, Principal, Diet, Senapati, to speak on role of SCERTs in National School Education Policy.
Respected moderator, respected panelists, and senior officers from Education Department, and my teacher fraternities, and who are present all here in this function. It is very fortunate for the Department of SCERT to express a few words regarding their roles and their responsibilities in this NEP 2020. In fact, we all know that there are many provisions which are written in this NEP 2020, and in implementing this NEP 2020, what we have to do, different stakeholders at the different levels have to involve in that, and in implementing and in carrying out the task successfully, and in achieving the vision of this NEP as well as the Sustainable Development Goal 4, we have to work together in this area. Therefore, considering this fact, we feel that what kind of roles and the responsibilities the SCERT is taking up in this NEP, so we are trying to express whatever role is there in public domain. Here, first, what is SCERT? I will explain in one line that mainly the SCERT is a department under the education, and the main function of the SCERT is to provide training to the teachers, especially now we are providing training to the elementary teachers, and as well as the other teachers also we are providing training, and research work also we have to conduct, and material development, and these kind of academic works are taken up by the SCERT at the state level as a second tier of the supporting mechanism in the education sector. And in the third tier, in the district level, there are diets, and the diets are implementing whatever decision is taken up by the SCERT, and it is implementing at the district level by the diets. So looking at this NEP, in the school education chapter, we found that there are 8 sections, and the roles of the SCERT and the diets, there are in all the chapters, it is cross-cutting. That is why we do not mention any para or anything there. So instead, we are saying the roles and the responsibilities. So in the first section of early childhood care education, the main target of this early childhood care education is that in para number 1.1, it is written that universal provisioning of quality early childhood development care and education must be achieved by 2030. That is 100% enrollment should be done by 2030. So in this regard, we have made a under the STET task force, we have a subcommittee at the directorate level, and at the directorate level, we have taken a decision to conduct a baseline survey of the existing preschools and Anganwadi centers, and to find out the present status of such ECCE centers. Because without knowing the status of those ECCE centers, we cannot take up any action upon that. That is why for the baseline study, we have till now completed up to the development tool level, and the draft tool has been developed. And the findings of that baseline study, we will be incorporating in the position paper, and which has to be developed as a STET level position paper, and which will highlight the present status, the issues, and the challenges in the ECCE in the state. It is relevant para is 1.4 to 1.5 in the early childhood care section. So about ECC, there are many broad things that which are to be taken up by the SCERT, and before some minutes ago, one of the panelists was asked by some of our teacher group that about the curriculum of those ECEE, and whether the social welfare department has developed any kind of curriculum in terms of ECCE. Actually, it is not. Now the SCERT has to adopt the curriculum of SCCE, which is developed by the NCERT. We can directly adopt the curriculum developed by the NCERT, or what we can do is that we can adapt it by incorporating the local content. The local flavor we have to incorporate in that, and after that the state curriculum framework of the ECCE has to be made up. So now, till now, the groundwork of the this development of curriculum has been taken up by the SCERT, and it is in the draft stage, and we are also working on that. Besides that, in doing this, the capacity building of our teacher educators who are working at the diets are needed very much. That's why before some months back, in the beginning of this, NEP 2020, in collaboration with NCERT, their capacity building in regards to ECCE has been taken up, and they are the people who are working in this the curriculum development process. So in that curriculum, what we have to mention clearly is what kind of language or dialect we have to use in that region or in that district. Because Manipur, as we know that, we have different kinds of dialects, and from one district to another tribal district, we do not know their dialects to one another. But when we go to the mainland India, what happened? In Hindi, they can communicate to one another very easily. But suppose one person who is from Tamenglong district, he or she cannot understand the dialect who is speaking in the Senapati district. So this kind of difficult condition is encountering in case of Manipur. That is why we have to mention clearly that what kind of language or dialect is to be used in that particular region or the particular district, so that the teacher or the Anganwadi workers can be trained in that kind of dialect. This is what we have to do. And teaching learning materials. So teaching learning materials, when we talk about teaching learning materials, it can be incorporated in many things we can put in there, right from the activity books to up to the different kind of models and the charts. Everything can be incorporated in these TLMs. So in these TLMs also, what the child has to know from their immediate environment, we have to incorporate, and in that curriculum it's be clearly mentioned. And the local games, we have to encourage the local games, and the toys. About the toys, these SCERT also participating in the virtual toy fair, which is conducted recently. So toys is also another teaching, we can take it as a teaching learning material, and through these toys, what kind of learning can be enhanced to the child in terms of this ECCE. And we are talking much about the training of the teachers or the training of the Anganwadi workers. So when we look into it in the NEP, that it is the role of the SCERT that to train those Anganwadi workers or those ECCE practitioners. So in that, the SCERT have to design two types of, not only one type, two types of courses we have to design on it. The courses should be conducted on online mode. One will be for 6 months certificate course for those who are 10+2 and above. And for those who are below 10+2, they have to undergo one-line certificate course on online mode. So there are many other provisions. So that's why simply I was talking in every sections, in all the 8 sections, the role of the SCERT are cross-cutting in that. And last but not least, what I want to mention is that, as the time is very short, the standard setting and the accreditation for school education, what it says is that academic work would be conducted by separate independent bodies in order to avoid conflict of interest and the concentration of power, and to ensure due and quality focus on each role. Therefore, each and every stakeholder who are going to involve in this NEP should understand their specific roles, and that they have to link together so that they can help to one another. So what kind of academic role is that SCERT has to take up? Academic matters, including academic standard with curricula in the state, will be led by the SCERT with close consultation and the collaboration with NCERT, which will be reinvigorated as an institution. This is one. The second is that the SCERT will develop a school quality assessment and accreditation framework, we call it SQUAF, through wide consultation with all the stakeholders. This is for schools. And the SCERT will also lead a change management process for the reinvigoration of the CRCs, Cluster Resource Centers, BRCs, that is the Block Resource Centers, and the DIETs, which must change the capacity of the work culture of the institutions in 3 years. Very short, within 3 years, they have to change it and developing them into vibrant institution of excellence. Therefore, at the conclusion, what I want to suggest to all is that looking at all the different aspects of the roles and the responsibilities of the SCERT, that what we require for the present situation is that to expand and restructure the existing structure of SCERT and the diets at the district level. What I'm talking about diets also. When we restructure the SCERT, it is also required to restructure the diets in terms of human resources, infrastructure, and technological inputs, because technology is also another one which is going through everywhere. Therefore, human resources should be in terms of numbers of manpowers and their capacity and the competency. So these are all some roles and some suggestions that I have put in regards of SCERT. Thank you once again to all.
Thank you very much, M. Indira Devi. So now I take the opportunity of inviting Sri L. Chandrakumar Singh, Program Officer, Samagraha Shiksha Manipur, to speak on guidelines regarding age-appropriate mainstreaming identified out of school children.
Respected moderator, respected panelists, or respected officers from education department and other departments, invitees, and my dear teachers. I want the PB topic C, guidelines regarding the age-appropriate mainstreaming of identified out-of-school children. So, aduna ayak ahanbada magi guidelines lakrimanda auto school si auto school children haibisi kana kanano kana auto school channel haibano haibisidagi hojage and global partnership for education 2013 na define to bagi matungina auto school children haibisi angang makhal kara schooling facility later na mai community do ai school da chattaba ani subana angang sing karam angang hai bakanda schooling facility se leiraga su chattaba ahun subadana masi school da ming chalaga su karaktaba natra hagana kara maga su tokiba school system tagi drop out tokiba aduna masigi definition sidagi punsilaga ahan bagi category sibuna khoina never in loan haina loba yai aduga limoriba atopa category sibuna khoina drop out haisini anna khoina out of school life siga drop out siga out of school sida magi never in loan and drop out haiba ports ani silegani aduga ayama number di more than 90% di koigi drop out na oigani anna khoina aigi topic si national education policy sigi magi pera number 3.1 da yauriba duga mari lenabani and 3.1 da haidibasi hana samaga shiksha housing da samaga shiksha kauraba hana samaga shiksha abhiyan haino odambase masigi makada tongan ba strategy mayamama right to education act sigi banamji phangnaba honabada khoina pakatpa matamda angang enrollment dropout si yamna lerambadagi handhanba ngamena my report sira hairi adorega su maru ina magi report hojigi 3.1 sina haibagi matungina di angang akhui lower level primary level dai tare sei taruk tagi nipan sidi 90% GR attend to here my dropout yam le here then sahi ma pannamu sun tara sina sigmarakta lebasina around 79% my lay duga unfortunately akhui sahi tara ma thoiden 20 gi side level per sidi my GR se only 56 ada mutale I just country throughout the Manipuri context na sidi country skini aduna masigi strategy si lapamatamda khoina sarva shiksha abhiyan class 1 to 8 deal to jabani sarva shiksha abhiyan na and sarva shiksha abhiyan na hana yana na masi hawdokpa matamda angang sing sigi dam takari strategy packet page haiba kanda khoi sigi magi guideline na piramisi musagi school lejadaba mafam aham category gido aduda magi mafam sing education guarantee scheme haidana ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯇꯦꯝꯄꯔꯔꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯃꯈꯜ ꯑꯃ ꯍꯥꯡꯗꯣꯛꯄ ꯌꯥꯕꯁꯤ ꯒꯥꯏꯗꯂꯥꯏꯟꯅ ꯄꯤꯔꯝꯃꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯅꯤꯁꯨꯕ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜꯗꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯒ ꯑꯉꯥꯡ ꯀꯥꯗꯕ ꯃꯐꯝꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨꯗꯅ AIE Alternative and Innovative Education ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯁꯤꯅꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯁꯤ a kind of bridge course ꯅꯤ ꯃꯥꯁꯤ 6 months 9 months 12 months ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯗꯤꯖꯥꯏꯟ ꯇꯧꯔꯝꯃꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯥ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯤꯝ EGS and AIE ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯁꯔꯕ ꯁꯤꯛꯁꯥ ꯑꯚꯤꯌꯥꯟꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯥꯗ ꯁꯔꯕ ꯁꯤꯛꯁꯥ ꯑꯚꯤꯌꯥꯟꯁꯤ 2001ꯗ ꯍꯧꯗꯣꯔꯛꯄ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯑꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯤꯝ ꯑꯅꯤꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯃꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯍꯥꯟꯕꯒꯤ EGS scheme ꯁꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯃꯤꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯂꯤꯡ ꯐꯦꯁꯤꯂꯤꯇꯤꯁꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯚꯥꯏꯗ ꯇꯧꯕꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯇꯁ ꯑꯃꯈꯛ ꯍꯥꯏꯐꯦꯠ ꯊꯝꯖꯒꯦ ꯁꯔꯕ ꯁꯤꯛꯁꯥ ꯑꯚꯤꯌꯥꯟꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯏꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯣꯗ꯭ꯌꯨꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯛꯄ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯔꯥꯏꯠ ꯇꯨ ꯏꯖꯨꯀꯦꯁꯟ ꯑꯦꯛꯠꯁꯤ 2010 ꯒꯤ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯜꯁꯤꯗꯒꯤ ꯆꯠꯅꯕ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯄꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯆꯠꯅꯕ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯄ ꯁꯋꯥꯏꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯃꯦꯄꯤꯡ ꯑꯃ ꯋꯤꯠ ꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤ MSRDꯗꯩꯁꯨ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯤꯔꯛꯄꯒ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯃꯦꯄꯤꯡ ꯑꯦꯛꯁꯔꯁꯥꯏꯖ ꯑꯃ ꯇꯧꯋꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯃꯦꯄꯤꯡ ꯑꯦꯛꯁꯔꯁꯥꯏꯖꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯁꯥꯏꯟꯁ ꯑꯦꯟ ꯇꯦꯛꯅꯣꯂꯣꯖꯤꯅꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯇꯦꯡ ꯄꯥꯡꯕꯤꯈꯤꯕꯅꯤ ꯁꯦꯇꯦꯂꯥꯏꯠ ꯏꯃꯦꯖꯦꯁ ꯂꯧꯔꯒ ꯇꯧꯈꯤꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯨꯡ ꯏꯟꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ EGS ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯕꯁꯤꯗꯒꯤ EGS 700 ꯍꯦꯟꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯃꯤ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯁꯨꯏꯇꯦꯕꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ 456 EGS ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯅꯣꯠ ꯑꯣꯟꯂꯤ EGS ꯈꯛꯇ ꯅꯠꯇꯅ ꯑꯟꯁꯥꯞ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ EGSꯁꯨ ꯍꯥꯡꯗꯅ ꯑꯟꯁꯥꯞ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯗꯕ ꯖꯒꯥ 335 ꯑꯟꯁꯥꯞ ꯇꯣꯇꯦꯜ 791 ꯅ꯭ꯌꯨ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯥꯏꯃꯥꯔꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁꯔꯕ ꯁꯤꯛꯁꯥ ꯑꯚꯤꯌꯥꯟꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯥꯗ ꯏꯁꯇꯥꯕ꯭ꯂꯤꯁ ꯇꯧꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯥꯏꯃꯥꯔꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯕ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜꯗꯅ 381 ꯁꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯥꯏꯃꯥꯔꯤ ꯇꯨ ꯑꯄꯔ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯥꯏꯃꯥꯔꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯞꯒ꯭ꯔꯦꯗ ꯇꯧꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯗꯦꯟ ꯑꯇꯣꯞꯄ ꯆꯤꯡꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯑꯔꯥꯞꯄ ꯍꯦꯕꯤꯇꯦꯁꯟꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯟꯅ ꯂꯩꯕ ꯃꯐꯝꯁꯤꯡꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯗꯤꯁꯑꯦꯗꯚꯥꯟꯇꯦꯖ ꯒ꯭ꯔꯨꯞ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯌꯦꯡꯉꯒ 9 ꯔꯦꯁꯤꯗꯦꯟꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ 11 KGBB ꯑꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯐꯖꯅ 20ꯁꯤ ꯔꯟ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯆꯂꯥꯏꯔꯒ ꯂꯩꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯅꯧꯅ 8 ꯔꯦꯁꯤꯗꯦꯟꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯍꯣꯁꯇꯦꯜ ꯑꯃꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯐꯪꯉꯦ ꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯏꯅꯤꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯖꯗ ꯂꯩꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯃꯒ ꯁꯤꯛꯁꯥꯒꯤ ꯍꯥꯟꯅ ꯁꯔꯕ ꯁꯤꯛꯁꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯝꯕꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯥꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯚꯥꯏꯗ ꯇꯧꯈꯤꯕ ꯐꯦꯁꯤꯂꯤꯇꯤꯁꯤꯡꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯑꯐꯇꯔ ꯏꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯗ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯤꯡ RT Act 2009 RT Act 2009ꯁꯤ ꯏꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯗ꯭ꯌꯨꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯛꯄ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯃꯥ ꯁ꯭ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯇꯦꯖꯤꯁꯦ ꯈꯤꯇꯪ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯥꯏꯜꯗꯤ ꯍꯣꯡꯉꯛꯑꯦ ꯍꯥꯟꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯕꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯤꯝ ꯑꯃ ꯆꯠꯂꯝꯕꯁꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯤꯝꯁꯦ ꯈꯤꯇꯪ ꯇꯧꯔꯛꯏ ꯃꯇꯝꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯨꯡ ꯏꯟꯅ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ EGSꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯕꯁꯤꯡꯗꯣ ꯃꯥ ꯂꯩꯇ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯗꯤꯁꯀꯟꯇꯤꯅ꯭ꯌꯨ ꯇꯧꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ EGS ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯄꯣꯠꯁꯤ ꯂꯩꯇ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯃꯥ ꯉꯁꯥꯏ ꯅ꯭ꯌꯨ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯑꯣꯄꯟ ꯑꯅꯧꯕ ꯄꯤꯌꯣꯅ ꯄꯤꯈꯤꯗꯨꯅꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ AIE ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯕꯗꯨꯅ AIE ꯁꯦꯟꯇꯔꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯣꯏꯅ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅꯤꯡ ꯁꯦꯟꯇꯔꯁ ꯐꯣꯔ ꯑꯦꯖ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯌꯦꯠ ꯃꯦꯅꯦꯖꯃꯦꯟꯠ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯑꯋꯥꯔ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯆꯤꯜꯗ꯭ꯔꯦꯟ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯨꯅ ꯔꯤꯗꯤꯖꯥꯏꯟ ꯇꯧꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯍꯥꯟꯅꯒꯤ AIE ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯕꯗꯣ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯒꯤ ꯇꯣꯄꯤꯛꯁꯦ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯑꯀꯣꯟꯕꯒꯤꯁꯤꯗ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯕ AIEꯗꯒꯤ ꯔꯤꯗꯤꯖꯥꯏꯟ ꯇꯧꯔꯛꯏꯕ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅꯤꯡ ꯁꯦꯟꯇꯔ ꯐꯣꯔ ꯑꯦꯖ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯌꯦꯠ ꯃꯦꯅꯦꯖꯃꯦꯟꯠ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯑꯋꯥꯔ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯆꯤꯜꯗ꯭ꯔꯦꯟ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯨꯅꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏ ꯁꯤ ꯂꯥꯛꯆꯔꯤꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯟꯅ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅꯤꯡ ꯐꯣꯔ ꯑꯋꯥꯔ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯆꯤꯜꯗ꯭ꯔꯦꯟꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯃꯥꯁꯤ AIDꯨꯒ ꯑꯣꯜꯃꯣꯁ ꯃꯥꯟꯅꯩ ꯃꯥꯁꯨ ꯕ꯭ꯔꯤꯖ ꯀꯣꯔꯁꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯄꯦꯔꯦꯠꯇ ꯃꯉꯣꯟꯗ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯁꯤꯅ ꯃꯥꯒꯤꯗꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯄꯦꯔꯦꯠꯁꯤ ꯍꯣꯡꯗꯣꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯃꯝꯁꯤ 3 months ꯑꯣꯏꯒꯗꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯃꯦꯛꯁꯤꯃꯝꯁꯤ ꯑꯉꯥꯡ ꯑꯃꯗ 24 months ꯐꯥꯎꯕ ꯀꯣꯚꯔ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯌꯥꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯌꯦ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯁꯤ ꯃꯇꯨꯡ ꯏꯟꯅ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ 24 monthsꯁꯤ ꯀꯣꯚꯔ ꯇꯧ ꯇꯥꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯂꯥꯛꯀꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯏꯚ꯭ꯔꯤ ꯏꯌꯔ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯉꯥꯡ ꯈꯔꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯀꯣꯚꯔ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯀꯟꯇꯤꯅ꯭ꯌꯨ ꯐ꯭ꯔꯣꯝ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯚꯤꯌꯁ ꯏꯌꯔꯅ ꯃꯃꯥꯡ ꯆꯍꯤꯗꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯛꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯈꯔꯅ ꯐ꯭ꯔꯦꯁ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯦꯟꯇꯤꯐꯥꯏ ꯆꯍꯤꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯦꯟꯇꯤꯐꯥꯏ ꯇꯧꯕꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯁꯤꯡ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯄꯨꯜꯂꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯖꯦꯟꯠ ꯆꯍꯤꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅꯤꯡ ꯁꯦꯟꯇꯔꯗ ꯀꯣꯚꯔ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯁꯤꯗ ꯀꯥꯎꯟ ꯇꯧꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅꯤꯡ ꯁꯦꯟꯇꯔꯁꯤ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯈꯜ ꯑꯅꯤꯗ ꯇꯧꯏ ꯑꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯔꯦꯁꯤꯗꯦꯟꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯃꯣꯗ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯅꯟ ꯔꯦꯁꯤꯗꯦꯟꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯃꯣꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯇꯝꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯐꯤꯕꯝ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯨꯡ ꯏꯟꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯅꯤꯃꯛꯁꯤ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯅ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯨꯞ ꯇꯧꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯆꯂꯥꯏꯔꯤꯉꯩꯗ ꯑꯩꯉꯣꯟꯗ ꯉꯁꯥꯏ ꯄꯤꯕꯤꯕꯁꯤ ꯒꯥꯏꯗꯂꯥꯏꯟ ꯔꯤꯒꯥꯔꯗꯤꯡ ꯑꯦꯖ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯌꯦꯠ ꯃꯦꯟꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯡ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯇꯁꯦꯡꯕ ꯒꯥꯏꯗꯂꯥꯏꯟ ꯄꯦꯗꯥꯒꯣꯖꯤꯀꯦꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯕꯒꯤ ꯄꯥꯔꯠꯀꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯁꯨ ꯑꯄꯨꯟꯕ ꯒꯥꯏꯗꯂꯥꯏꯟ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ NCERTꯅ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯨꯞ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯂꯩꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯠꯅꯁꯨ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯐꯣꯂꯣ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯠꯀꯤ ꯆꯥꯟꯅꯕꯗꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯠꯀꯤ ꯀꯟꯁꯔꯟ SCERTꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯀꯟꯅ ꯑꯗꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯖꯔꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯏꯟ ꯗ ꯃꯤꯟ ꯇꯥꯏꯝ ꯃꯔꯛꯁꯤꯗ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯗꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅꯤꯡ ꯁꯦꯟꯇꯔꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯆꯂꯥꯏꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯔꯟ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯃꯣꯏꯅ ꯊꯕꯛ ꯑꯅꯤꯈꯛ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯏꯝꯄꯣꯔꯇꯦꯟ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯑꯅꯤꯁꯤ ꯇꯧꯗꯕ ꯌꯥꯗꯦꯅ ꯃꯣꯏ ꯆꯤꯊꯤ ꯏꯕꯤꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯁꯦ ꯑꯍꯥꯟꯕꯗ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯦꯟꯇꯤꯐꯤꯀꯦꯁꯟ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯑꯥꯎꯠ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯆꯤꯜꯗ꯭ꯔꯦꯟ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯅꯤꯁꯨꯕꯗꯅ ट्रैकिंग सिस्टम ऑफ द मेन स्ट्रीम आउट ऑफ स्कूल चिल्ड्रेन है असाई अहानबद आइडेंटिफिकेशन आउट ऑफ स्कूल चिल्ड्रेन से अखोई 2010-11 पूरा मनपुर ꯄꯨꯂꯞꯁꯤ ꯄꯨꯜꯂꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯆꯧꯕ NGO ꯏꯟꯚꯣꯜꯕ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯇꯧꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯑꯉꯥꯡ 1,000,000 ꯐꯪꯈꯤ 21,400 ꯐꯪꯈꯤꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯆꯠꯊꯔꯛꯄꯗꯅ 8%ꯗꯗꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ 4,975 ꯈꯛꯇꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯉꯥꯡ ꯆꯍꯤꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯒ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ 8%ꯗ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯁꯦ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯅꯦꯁꯅꯦꯜ ꯁꯦꯝꯄꯜ ꯁꯔꯚꯦ NSSꯅ ꯄꯤꯕ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠꯇꯗꯤ not only Manipur ꯈꯛꯇꯒꯤꯗꯤ ꯅꯠꯇꯦ ꯚꯥꯔꯠ ꯄꯨꯝꯕꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯣꯏꯅ ꯄꯤꯕ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠꯇꯨꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯉꯥꯡ ꯃꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯒ ꯆꯥꯎꯅ ꯈꯦꯠꯅꯕ ꯂꯩ ꯍꯥꯏ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠ ꯃꯇꯨꯡꯗꯗꯤ ꯑꯔꯥꯎꯟ ꯑꯕꯥꯎꯠ 30,000ꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯂꯩꯕ ꯌꯥꯏꯅ ꯑꯦꯛꯁꯄꯦꯛ ꯇꯧꯏ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯠꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯒꯁꯨ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤꯗꯨꯗꯤ ꯁꯦꯝꯄꯜ ꯁꯔꯚꯦꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯃꯇꯥꯡꯗ ꯊꯝꯖꯅꯤꯡꯕ ꯅꯉꯣꯟꯗ ꯁꯦꯟꯁꯁ ꯁꯔꯚꯦ ꯅꯠꯇꯦ ꯈꯔ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯁꯦꯝꯄꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯁꯔꯚꯦꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ out of school identify tꯧꯕꯒꯤ ꯁꯤ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯀꯟꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯛꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯉꯔꯥꯡꯅꯁꯨ ꯂꯦꯇꯔ ꯑꯃ ꯊꯥꯕꯤꯔꯛꯏ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯗꯤꯄꯥꯔꯠꯃꯦꯟꯅ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯊꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯐꯥꯏꯅꯥꯟꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯏꯌꯥꯔ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯜ ꯃꯦꯁꯤ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯄ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯇꯧꯅꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯂꯦꯞꯆꯔꯤ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯁꯔꯕ ꯁꯤꯛꯁꯥ ꯑꯚꯤꯌꯥꯟ ꯁꯤ ꯆꯂꯥꯏꯕ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯄꯤꯔꯛꯏꯕ ꯐꯟꯁꯤ ꯄꯥꯔꯇꯤꯀꯨꯂꯔ ꯏꯟꯇꯔꯚꯦꯟꯁꯟ ꯍꯦꯠ ꯑꯃꯃꯝꯗ ꯄꯜꯂꯒ ꯄꯤꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯦꯟꯇꯤꯐꯥꯏꯠ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯑꯥꯎꯠ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯆꯤꯜꯗ꯭ꯔꯦꯟ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯄꯥꯔꯇꯤꯀꯨꯂꯔ ꯍꯦꯠꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯐꯟꯁꯤ ꯂꯧꯐꯝ ꯍꯦꯠꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯟꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯗꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯃꯣꯏ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯄꯣꯁ ꯅꯣꯝ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯃꯣꯏ ꯅꯣꯝꯁꯤ ꯔꯤꯚꯥꯏꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯍꯟꯗꯛ ꯂꯥꯛꯀꯗꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯁꯤꯟꯕ ꯆꯍꯤ 2021 and 22ꯗꯒꯤꯗꯤ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯖꯒꯥ ꯑꯃ ꯃꯣꯏꯅ ꯐꯟ ꯍꯦꯠ ꯑꯃ ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯌꯦꯠ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯂꯥꯏꯛꯂꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯑꯍꯥꯟꯕ ꯆꯍꯤꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯐꯟꯁꯤ ꯂꯩꯇꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯐꯟ ꯂꯩꯇꯕꯅꯤꯅ ꯑꯅꯧꯕ ꯆꯍꯤ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯜ ꯃꯦ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯍꯦꯛ ꯍꯧꯒꯠꯂꯛꯄ ꯃꯇꯝꯁꯤꯗꯩꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯕꯖꯦꯠꯇ ꯍꯥꯞꯄꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯎꯔ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜꯒꯤ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯦꯟꯇꯤꯐꯥꯏꯁꯤ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯜ ꯃꯦ ꯖꯨꯟ ꯊꯦꯡꯉꯕꯗ ꯁ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯄꯥꯏꯈꯠꯄ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯥꯔꯠ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯍꯧꯅꯕꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁꯦꯝ ꯁꯥꯖꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ tracking system of the mainstream of out of school children ꯑꯩ ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏ ꯑꯃꯃꯝ ꯂꯥꯛꯆꯒꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯑꯍꯥꯟꯕ ꯍꯥꯎꯁꯍꯣꯜ ꯁꯔꯚꯦꯒꯤꯗꯨ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯤꯜ ꯃꯦꯗ ꯁꯦꯝ ꯁꯥꯖꯔꯤꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯨꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯀꯤꯡꯁꯤꯗꯅ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯀꯤꯡ ꯁꯤꯁꯇꯦꯝꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯃꯛꯀꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅꯗꯤ ꯀꯝꯄ꯭ꯌꯨꯇꯔꯥꯏꯖ ꯇꯧꯅ ꯂꯩꯖꯗ꯭ꯔꯤ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯦꯅꯨꯑꯦꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯦꯚꯦꯜ 3ꯗ ꯑꯍꯥꯟꯕꯁꯤꯅ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯦꯜ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅꯤꯡ ꯁꯦꯟꯇꯔ ꯇꯧꯔꯤꯕꯗꯨꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯔꯦꯀꯣꯔꯗ ꯇꯧꯏ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯁꯤꯡꯗꯣ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯁꯦꯀꯦꯟꯁꯤꯅ ꯃꯥꯅ ꯃꯦꯟ ꯁ꯭ꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯝ ꯇꯧꯗꯣꯏꯕ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜꯒꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯔꯦꯀꯣꯔꯗ ꯇꯧꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯊꯥꯔꯠꯁꯤꯅ ꯗꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯛ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯖꯦꯛ ꯑꯣꯐꯤꯁꯇ ꯃꯣꯏꯅ ꯀꯝꯄꯥꯏꯜ ꯇꯧꯏ ꯗꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯀꯝꯄ꯭ꯌꯨꯇꯔꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯗꯇꯥꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ SDMIS ꯁ꯭ꯇꯨꯗꯦꯟ ꯗꯇꯥꯕꯦꯖ ꯃꯦꯅꯦꯖꯃꯦꯟ ꯁꯤꯁꯇꯦꯝ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯅ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯦꯝꯒꯠꯄ ꯁꯤꯁꯇꯦꯝ ꯑꯃ ꯂꯩ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯑꯦ ꯄꯥꯔꯠ ꯑꯣꯐ EU ꯗꯥꯏꯁ ꯍꯥꯏꯁꯤꯅ EU ꯗꯥꯏꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯆꯍꯤ ꯈꯨꯗꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯁꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯗꯇꯥ ꯈꯣꯝꯕꯅꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯨꯗꯦꯟ ꯗꯇꯥꯕꯦꯖ ꯃꯦꯅꯦꯖꯃꯦꯟ ꯁꯤꯁꯇꯦꯝꯁꯤ ꯂꯥꯛꯄ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯆꯥꯏꯜ ꯋꯥꯏꯁ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯕꯤꯖꯨꯋꯦꯜ ꯔꯦꯀꯣꯔꯗ ꯂꯩꯒꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯀꯝꯄ꯭ꯌꯨꯇꯔꯥꯏꯖ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯗꯇꯥꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯨꯡ ꯏꯟꯅ ꯀꯝꯄ꯭ꯌꯨꯇꯔꯥꯏꯖ ꯇꯧꯕꯒꯤ ꯈꯨꯗꯣꯡꯆꯥꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯂꯩꯒꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯀꯝꯄ꯭ꯌꯨꯇꯔꯥꯏꯖ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯃꯣꯏ NICꯅ ꯍꯟꯗꯛꯀꯤ 2021 ꯁꯤ ꯂꯣꯏꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯄꯗ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯕ ꯌꯥꯒꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯣꯏꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯇꯥꯔꯒꯦꯠ ꯇꯧꯔꯤ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯒꯤ ꯗꯇꯥꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯀꯝꯄ꯭ꯌꯨꯇꯔꯥꯏꯖ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯉꯝꯒꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯂꯣꯏꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯄꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯀꯗꯥꯏꯗ ꯑꯉꯥꯡ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯅ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯐꯖꯅ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯦꯟꯇꯤꯐꯥꯏ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯔꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯀꯗꯥꯏꯗ ꯃꯦꯅꯦꯖ ꯇꯧꯈꯤ ꯀꯗꯥꯏꯗ ꯆꯠꯈꯤꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯐꯖꯅ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯗꯇꯥꯁꯤ ꯃꯦꯅꯦꯖ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯃꯦꯅꯦꯖ ꯇꯧꯕꯒꯤ ꯁꯤꯁꯇꯦꯝꯁꯤ ꯐꯖꯅ ꯊꯝꯕꯤꯔꯕ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯏꯝꯄ꯭ꯂꯤꯃꯦꯟ ꯇꯧꯕꯗ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯑꯆꯧꯕ ꯁꯣꯏꯔꯣꯏꯗꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯃꯥꯏ ꯄꯥꯛꯄ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯒꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯊꯝꯖꯔꯒ ꯄꯨꯝꯅꯃꯛꯄꯨ ꯊꯥꯒꯠꯆꯔꯤ ꯊꯦꯡꯛ ꯌꯨ
Thank you very much, Sri L. Chandra Kumar Singh. Friends, we have listened to the speech of 7 learned speakers on different 7 topics. Now is the time for interaction. I'm sorry to inform all that we got only 10 minutes time allotment. Formerly, we got 40 to 45 minutes, but because of the time constraint, we got only 10 minutes. So at least I like to invite 5 or 6 questions from the learned audience. No observation, question.
Hello, sir. I'm Gopal from Kumi Collection. My question is, new education policy actually commercialization right
som paring
medical institution amadi private school mayam singa sum privatization tawase sum henjalwali aduna masi education system sida privatization se mataw karam haina muthat kadage habado akhigi expert mayam dagi thabinamna baningsingjari.
Anybody from the panelists?
I don't know if I'll be able to answer that correctly because today, ngasi koina lecture say private school na government school da kamai na mating PC ge na lecture bani private school muthat na baki hairak taragadi I might not have the right answer, but looking forward, school phagadhan ba haibise school ama katang pharagab di yabanate akhoi na ngasi phamaga tanaribase state ki oina irrespective of state private schools, government schools, ICSE schools, CBSE school, irrespective oina angang pumna mak school khuding makta chap manana kamaina pukhat sige haina tana bagi matamnina private school gi aphaba leiragasu lawbiyu kana ba at share tawzage Sishunistani Ketan Imphal East, Imphal West, ehagna represent auraga lakse bani training program beso koi mating pangzage support tawzage teacher training program de ECC the curriculum leite haina chamam na balai badu akhoi chahi kaya tauraga lai bani engasai 0 to 6 years aina soidana high grade 2 to 6 years ai bani so akhoi na share tawba ya bayam lai mating pangzage na lakse bani mating lawbiu haina haizage thank you.
Kitang supplement wa ngai please. So suppose I kainom ta haije yang ta. So anyway. National Education Policy 2020 da su ngasai akoi amrita na ngang ki badu da yaw re. Twinning or pairing of public and private schools. Indian education system si da hausi pau da lady si public domain, private domain, public sector, private sector, and animal lady. Ado yamna theoretical report and easy competition taurakan da hen papa product ama putorang na bagi theoretical understanding to the tawani. Ado hausi new education policies na taura isi twinning tawba, pairing tawba. Ado twinning tawba, pairing tawba sigi manungda ngasai koi na su resource person nangang bikiba academic collaboration tawna ba, resource sharing tawna ba, professional collaboration tawna ba. Asing mamayamam leidana. Si tawre heraga akoi da National Education Policy ki vision goal oina leiriba ngasai sama ngasai habiba drop out leiri ba si 2025 tagina 30 phaugi manungda GRC 100% oi haleraga loina mak lairik haitaba haibadu leihandana loina school de enroll tawna bagi policy si da koi yauribni aduna masi komai muthat ka dagi haibadu dia koi semi aduga National Education Policy itself si da as I understand aina khangzabadadi private school muthatpagi wa yaude ani sigi twinning and the pairing tawrakanda hen phaba education system amada lairiba angang sida piraga koi madu university da leiba yai mahiroi sing da piraga lower level da leiba yai madu medical education do leiba yai engineering leiba yai general leiba yai puna maksi loina tawraga hen phaba India ma sem na bagi manglan duni leiriba se madu gi road map ama sem na bohona zabane na thamjage aroi ba question na makanga thambiro du ai loisan jage
masigi matangda hojik se NCERT gi makoi gi finalize oiraba curriculum framework se thadok ko thadok taba taragasu ministry ki guidelines ki matungina khoi groundwork horo haidana khoina groundwork hojabani maramdi hana gi existing oiba ECCE gi 6 months ki course ki tongan ba NCERT gi curriculum laye aduna maram oidana khoina groundwork hobani hauji makidi final sida oiba natribanina aikoina how much percentage is to be incorporated haibase akoi adugidi final decision laitri aduna ai matang sida sumaina thamjage hayeng final oiramdaida masi akoi SCERT khaktagi work nate masi gi loiramdai sida akoi sub committee gi mamang da puthorakini then social welfare department kaurakini ko masi gi si akoina different departments singa loina raga tied up tawraga even health ki lairi ko mayam si loina ma collaborate tawrakani but just groundwork haijabani akoina haijabati aduna akoi start tawre haina dumaina thamjabani yabiragadra oja thank you
Okay, thank you very much. Yam Pazaba observation number PJ Kanjayado National Education Policy seeking a Sikana Ribasigi Mandung in the Akoina Madugi Matanga, Tuidona, Heisening, I later and I moderator Moina Heisege, Aduga gender equality, Wafam CD, ID mindset ki Wapam Nena Kali, why dress ki quarter, Natraga Atopa Tongan ba, Nainabayaba, factor Mayama Malay, Adubu, Tagai Maksena Koinangasi. In India in general aduga Manipur lairiba akogi gender inequality aduga akogi kari haini lairiba disabilities mayam sidi culture related oiba aduga akogi mindset so long as mindset sidabu lairing di madu kokpa suam ngamoi daba pot ne aduna madugi potu dagi nanthok na ba honnaba aiba sidi tongan ba effort ama tongan ba policy ama leigene na khalli aduna matam ga kitang ten manina hangbiri ba question do kisitang akoi ngasi khanajari ba topic sing siga relevant oiba kitang watcha yena khanjarga topic tumakti yam pai ko du lairiba koina khanariba topic sida kitang relevant oiba wat pa namar moizaraga madu tongan ba hayang khudong saba ma leira kanda khana naba matang su lobi wa du ga khana ba yabagi khudong saba su phangakane aiba asa se thamjaraga ngasigi interaction gi potsi matang sida matam yam ten manamara moidona loisan jare haiba wafam jima thamjage aduga interaction si loisan laba matungda yamna ritual oina yai matam yam sang logzaroi moderator gi oiba yam chaurakpa ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠ ꯑꯃꯈꯛꯇꯪ मधु याबी सॉरी को मधु कहीं तौबीरो यारगदी एक्सक्यूज तौबीरो मतमसु लेत्रे मरमदी 10 मिनट्स हेन लौराबने अदुना खितंग मतमगी कंस्ट्रेंट जे अखोइना तौजब नते अखोइ मसी मणिपुरदा तौबा एकेडमिक सेमिनार सिंगदसु याम तोय तोय याम तेन थम्बियो याम तेन हाँ समझन मधु प्रोसेस लेना थमजगे इसाना खंजबद वाई कमिटी मैम सेमग्रे कमिटी मेंबर याजग्रे सरकार कमिटी की रिपोर्ट पीखग्रे सरकार मधु स्टडी तौरी सूम खंजबद मधु ममांगी सरकार हौजरपने हौजिकी सरकार पुथोक्तुना खनग्रे करे कमाई तौदना मणिपुर स्कूल खुदिंगमक से लोइना प्राइवेट स्कूल सिंगसे मरुओइना मसी कमाई तौदना गवर्नमेंट की कंट्रोल मखादा पॉलिसी अमगी मखादा लेगदगे हाइबगी प्रोसेस ता लेरी हाइबा वाफम से आई थमजरगा पाखुम ओइना तेंजनजगे को मादो चुमी चुमी मॉडरेटर सांगोक्सनबगी लेजरीब कईनोसीद मधु लेजद्रे सरकार की मरुओइबा लेंसनबिरिबा फंक्शनरी सिंगसिनसु मसी तासनबिरेरगा हेना सांगबा आईगी वाखल्लोंदा खंजबददी सुमाई तौदना कोई डिस्कशन तौबसिना हेना मरुओइना नोम निनी चथरेरगा तोंगान तोंगानबा कोई टास्क की लेरिबा फैक्टर मयाम सिदा खनरेरगा कुमाई तौना सेमगदगे ना खनबसि या मरुओइबने खल्ली अदु एनीवे ngasi दमक्ता ओइनादी आई एम सॉरी टू से दिस को अदुना मतम लेत्रमनिना इ टेंजनजगे रिचुअल ओइना इ मॉडरेटर की याम तेन तकबा वाफम अमकक थमजरगा ngasi gi ahanba session si loisanjanaba tawjage akoi session सिमता अहान सेशन से कोई स्पीकर तरेना तोंगान बा कईनो सिंह कोई वा गांगबीखरे गांगीबसिंगसी यान हानबदा कोई श्री बंटीना गांगबीखिबा वासी कोई गाइडलाइंस फॉर इंटीग्रेशन or linking of Anganwadi into school complexes and the clusters as the ngangbire say that aina moderator amoina yamna aina thamjaning basi maruina mana suggestion pibiram basi hauzik manipurda 11,510 Anganwadi centers sing lay aduna lairiba Anganwadi centers sing si phajana akoina inspection tawdana phajana function ohenba ngamde aduna national education policy si lakpaga loina na Anganwadi center pre primary education si primary education ga punjalla abanina masidaisda koigi lairiba posting sigi rationalization of the Anganwadi center sing si mathau tai haiba wafam mama yam tentakna thambirame aduna masigi wafam si ngasai akoigi organizer sing snu ngangi basing si loina record tawbiram gane na thajajai aduna ngasai akoigi bantina ngangbiram basida hairiba pose Anganwadi center sing ngasai question hangdirapa matamdasu phajana function tawda theoretically theory ga practice ka samnadaba akoida leiri se maruina akoida leiri ba awabasi hauzik education policy si da su talk doin policy itself se yeng ba yam phajaba yamna pharadauba manba aduga masi practice the implementation tawrakanda practice the ahoba mayam ama leirakpase masi gi awaba si na koina thengla doisi aduna theory and the practice ani makta pot ani si phanbagi mathau dai aikoina practice dai theory da phabadu practice tawrakanda phatabada amuk theory da semdokpa aduna ongoing process ida 2020 NEP sina 2035 2040 baugi manungda full implementation ngamnanaba theory and the practice ani makki practice amkak darkar lai aina khali masigi practice sida theory laire hauji road map am seme road map si semakpa matamda practice tawrakanda practice ta thengnaba khudong sadaba practice ta mapung phana pangthokpa ngamdaba singduna amuk madugi light phangiba difficulty singdugi light akoina semiba policy se masida amuk revisit tawigi darkar laiba revisit tawraba policy do amuk practice tawraga semdok semjin tawraga about some 20 years gi manungda national education policy se phajana semgat payana bagi achauba thaudang amakhak aikoi mayam maruina tinbiriba oza sing adidi maruina manipur sarkar gi effort they laibiriba machinery administrative machinery mayam sigi effort amakak darkar lai haina khali collective aiba effort amakak aduna akoi people's ki participation chhatra gi participation oza sing gi participation yaudana somna kake education policy si sarkar na implement tawbada mai pak pangamoi aduna aisu ozani oza ama oina chhatra oina citizen ama oina akoi education policy se mai pang na phona bada mayam punamak participate tawbiu amasung tawminna si haiba appeal sima ai thamjage ani subada ngasai akoi na ngangbi khiba akoi gi speaker si Miss Laila Gatfo mana ngangbi khiba se ngasai gi akoi gi kainoni akoi foundational learning and numeracy mission nais aduna koi education policies dengan saya speaker na ngangbi kibada yana na foundation learning si mainstream education ge integrate tau na bahon na basi handa ki leibo policies da ahan mani ba mot thambi maram di foundational literacy and the numeracy si India da koi ngasi ba phangjaba matam da 3 standard 4 standard yaura bawda akoi gi phajana pa ba thok da ba phajana numeracy gi knowledge lai tabagi pot si lai aduna ngasi gi anoba national education policy si da di foundation si da literacy foundational literacy and the numeracy se leitragadi akoi tungda lakadaba mayam si di loinamuk pheloi bagi pone maram di foundation to the phajana phangaudragadi hayeng mathak hapkat pa yar oidobunina aduna masigi foundational literacy and the numeracy si da akoi karamba mawong da akoi phajana semdok pa yagadage haibadu ngasigi speaker singsina ngangbi ki wafam sing do thamjan biraga madugi policy making tarpa matamdana director of education na lobby re raga marigi tholak pa poto sema matungda amuk madugi naina ba khona ba mayam ama lakhini haibagi kanjai maram di akoi gi state ki weba task force amju leiri task force tu gi makhada muk sub committee mayam ama leiri madu khanaraga people ga sumai todra people oriented oiba port ama lakani haibagi wakal da thamjage ahum subada ngasai akoi Miss Amrita Naurem na ngangbi khibada akoi gi twinning to wine haibado ngasai gi akoi hojing ngasi de ngasai akoi private school singa government ki school singa yamna tongan ba dichotomy oina uraga ani se punjan ba yada ba na tawgi pot am leiri adu India gi education system da Manipur gi da su private school amasung government school ani mona lawri ba pot si di yamna maroi ba ngaktani private school na lawri ba role si su hekta koina just at the moment si the hekta koina neglect to ba yaroi damnina ani si gi twinning to ba khak darkar lai hedana thambi thamba meeting ni aduna twinning to ba matam sida koina ngasai haijari ba to karam mong da koi collaborative to ba yabage in terms of human resource in terms of koi kari hani administrative mayam sida collaborate toraga sata the hen effective way ba hen phaba school education na pi ba yagada ge habagi wakalon no sida thambiri sina aduna ngasai mari subada ngangbi khiba khoi gi Professor Joy na ngangbi khibada ngasai gi health and education isam na ngasai aina taja hobada naraba angang na komai tawdana active mind leigani isam chamba hakazabagi skebi gi phugri thungba angang amana baw mind do direct tam matam da divert to batabani ozana ta ngai tarak matam da khoina hak madugi hakazabadu hotna da matam do dum somda piba ngamdab tabne sigi maruiba mayam do yam panbi kare duga technical loiba ngasai gi khoina thambi gi ba matam da khoi gi koi tongan ba koi gi sector sing as ka tongan ba koi gi hiram sing da koi ngak tangpi khame dai da yamna aina aroi ba yamna important way na logja ba pot ama khakta koi gi monitoring practice se masi yam important oi toina school da koi gi kari hai gani medical check up ki pot sia koi special medical team mana pangthok pa do pangthok ga loina na oza sing da su masi gi knowledge du pira kanda angang sing sia koi gi laina free oi han na bagi hon na bagi matang da madu gi pot da takpi re aduga madugi process tu matam gi koi continuing oiba process ama da oina sathara gadi health ka education ga mari leina bagi post se hena phagani hai bagi wakalon thambi kre adagi dia koi clinical psychologist Dr. Sangita Yambem na su akoi gi angang sing si da gifted child sing se koi gi kari hai ni masi komai tau dana identify tau ni aduga komai tau dana makoi si moi de leiba posi akoi makoi de leizari ba creativity si akoi komai tau dana akoi cultivate tau ni haibagi matang da takpi kre aina khangza ba phau da di mipung khuding maksi loina mak phil amada natraga amada gifted oiba ngak tani hena education gi mari leina ba sing ne hena khangbi ramani gifted oiba phil do kari da no haina identify tau bi daga adu da encourage tau bi ba aduga magi ability creativity do padu da akoina cultivate tau bi bagi mathau tai haiba wafam sima koi thambire aduga taruk subada M Indira Devi na SCERT na lawgadaba role gi matang da yam mayak seng na takpi gre aduna tongan ba school gi national education policy gi lairiba point trade ni pan si da NCERT na lawgadaba role mayam du loina mapung phana takpi gre sigi matang da aina ngasai hangi ba wahang amaga mari leina na khumjening basi akoina national education policy 2022 sigi vision aduga magi manungi shol hai tarena thawai ori bese yeng matamda Indian rooted hai Indian nation nam sagan na ba honna ba Indian rooted hai bane aduna India ise amu akoina punna yenga kanda di tongan ba varied cultures varied languages aduga varied ways of life mayam na sema kanda India hai basima oirak panina akoigi hausiki matam sidadi akoina India gi leiriba slogan about unity in diversity guys leibanina local elements local roots hai se yam darkar lei haina khanjai aduna aina khanjabada local elements sing se hapagi si hausi phawada 33% gumba local element hapaya na leidisi in national education policy 2020 si implement tor po matam da su madudogi ta da na masu madudagi hena akoi local element hapaya bagi khudong sa ba leirakane na khali leiraktra su sigi matang da di leibiri ba administration leibiri ba leinga sinasu masida koi gi local elements sing hapaya bagi potsigi matang da achauba thawdang ama lobirakanena na khalli maramdi tambiba maktada akoina angang singda akoina local language da magi mother tongue hai mother tongue da larik tambiba hai aduna apikpa angang da mother tongue da larik tamda matamda problem ani ne bathoise ahan bada language duma muktamba language duma tamba kanda subject specific knowledge ma tamba aduna language do phajana khangdraga di subject specific knowledge do mapung phana foundational ngasa akoina foundational literacy and the numeracy and pirisi akoigi singda ukrul da tangkhul lon ngangba mada aina maitai ron tambiru matamda maitai rona larik tambiru matamda maitai ron du khangdabana maram oidana ngasa gi foundational literacy and the numeracy se 100% piba ngamoya angang sing the failure kani aduna national education policy sina urisi mother tongue gi importance to phasana recognize tawra abanina overall curriculum semakpa matam dasu local element ki potse soidana hena encourage tawra kani haibagi wakhalona maka ai leijai karigumba moina specific oina sidagi han hapa yaroi haiba national gi policy la awawada tongan ba state sing dagi local elements sing hapa yana bagi demand soidana lakani aduna sigi matang dadi akoigi state government na hena aware oiraga laibigani haibagi ai wakhalon thamjage aroi by speaker na ngangbi kiba ngasai gi guidelines regarding age appropriate mainstreaming of identified out of school general haina hairi se ngasai phajana define to bigre akoina khangjabada illiterate haibaga non literate haibaga se khede na khanjai illiterate haibaga na facilities leina larik tamba phangda basing se illiterate ni facilities phangdadana larik tamba phangdabadi non literate ni I am computer illiterate computer gi facilities lai ai फजना हाइत्रम ए कंप्यूटर इलिटरेट ने कंप्यूटर की फैसिलिटीज लेतबा अंगा अमदी कंप्यूटर इलिटरेट नते कंप्यूटर न लिटरेट ने अदुना ngसाइगी आउट ऑफ स्कूल चिल्ड्रेन लेसिदा कोई चंद्र कुमार ने याम फजना सेक्शन अहुम थोंना कोई ग्रुप कैटेगरी अहुम थोंना खाइदोगा मोइसे कुमाई तौदना आइडेंटिफाई तौनी कुमाई तौदना ट्रैकिंग तौगनी हाइबगी पोर्टसिंग दो थंबीकरे अदुना ऑर्गेनाइजर सिंग नसु ngasi कोई लार्नेट स्पीकर्स लार्नेट रिसोर्स पर्सन सिंग ngangi bo pot sing si phajana recording thambirangane na khanjai aduga reporter su leirangane na khanjai reporter na moi sing do phajana record toksan biraga masidagi karamba policy semba yabagi haibado sema matungda policy oina koina uraba matungda mado task force da de department concern sing da khanaraga public tagi among madugi kari haigani magi suggestions adi observation mayam ama invite tawrakani aiba wafam si lengsin biri ba punamaki maphamda nonglungna thamjabaga loina na ngasi gi ahan technical session si loire haidana moderator amoina yam gi maphamda khanganjari thank you all
Thagachari ahan ba session sigi moderator obikiba Professor W Nabakumar Singh loinana panelist oina lengsin bikiba expert pum namak pasu amukahana thagat pa phongdokchari akoi anisuba session asi haujadringai da atenba lunch break mamatang mayam puna lomina kesi koi already tai program schedule da di pungpham asi anisuba session gi pungpham oiraklabadi adubo koi gi mamangi function da gi sum thintarakpana kitang di koi matamna yanglaga koi na taple duna oza singna waro biroi lunch break si 10 tak pa ohed si aduga amuka hanna auditorium si dalin sing biraktuna anisuba session asi mapungphahan minasi thank you. Lunch break si 15 minutes ki lunch break oigani aduga lunch si som auditorium dagi mapan thokpa matamda mayamna mapamdu thengna biragani towards the other end of the auditorium ne thank you.
Actually, my hometown is at Kalsi. We will meet some.
one-day panel discussion on National Education Policy 2020. Thoramasigi Anisuba technical session on higher education session asi haunabagi koi same saba du loijare aduna lengbi rakliba teacher participants khuding makna auditorium da lengsin biraktuna session asi hobada mapung phahan biu haina noluk na ningsingjari amuktanga han ningsingjari akoigi panel discussion saruk yaw lakpiriba koigi teacher participants pumna magna technical session 2 asi haunabagi damakta akoi same sabadu loijare aduna oza sing auditorium da lengsin biraklaga thoramasi haubada mapung phan biu sarukya biu haina ningsingjari. Anisuba technical session asi moderator obigadaba Professor N. Lokendra Singh, Head Department of History, Manipur University. Saruk yabigadaba panelist Singdi, Dr. W. Jyotirmoy, Associate Professor, DM College of Teachers Education. Shri K.H. Dinesh Kumar Singh, Associate Professor, DM College of Teachers Education. Professor W. Chan Babu Singh, Registrar, Manipur University. Professor C.H. Ibohal Maitei, Director, CSED, Manipur Institute of Management Studies, Manipur University. Dr. C.H. Shilaramani Devi, Principal, DM College of Arts. Professor N. Rajmohan Singh, Manipur University. Dr. L. Bishwanath Sama, Associate Professor, Philosophy, Manipur University. Dr. Bhaveshwar Tongbram, SNO Equip. Amadi Dr. N. Sanjoy Singh, Associate Professor, GP Women's College. Hariba session asigi, Repertor Obigadaba, Respected Singde, Dr. M. Suresh, Associate Professor, GP Women's College. Shri S. Birajit, Assistant Professor, Manipur College. Amadi Dr. T.H. Tilakraj, Assistant Professor, Ideal Girls College. Amukta hanggahan naning singjari, koyi matamsi Thingjilaklabanina technical session ani subasi haunaba koi sem sajare lakpiriba teacher participants khudimmakna auditorium da lengsin biraktuna session asi hobada mapungphahan biu haina ningsingjari. One-day panel discussion on National Education Policy 2020. Technical session ani suba koi hauna bigi tanjadu lojari masigi damakta session asigi moderator oibigidaba Professor N. Lokendra Singh, Head Department of History, Manipur University. Professor Bo stays thakta lengkhat piraknaba nolukna ningsingjari. Sargaloina na koi ngasigi panelist oina lengsin bigadaba expert pum namak puso stage thakta lengkhat pirak na baning singjari ngasigi panelist singdi Dr. W. Jyotirmoy as Associate Professor DMCTE Sabusu noluk na ning singjari Shri K.H. Dinesh Kumar Singh Associate Professor DMCTE Professor W. Chan Babu Singh Registrar Manipur University Professor C.H. Ibohal Maitei, Director, CSED, MIMS, Manipur University. Dr. C.H. Silaramani Devi, Principal, DM College of Arts. Professor N. Raj Mohan Singh, Manipur University. Dr. L. Bishwanath Sama, Associate Professor, Philosophy, Manipur University. Dr. Bhaveshwar Tongbram, SNO Equip. Amadi Dr. N. Sanjoy Singh, Associate Professor, GP Women's College. Dai Sectalin Birba session asi chair to bigadaba moderator Amadi panelist Singbu Ikai Kumna Boy Nachamba Kudola Matang Tamjari Masigidamakta respected Director High End Technical Education Dr. Rangita Bali Waikam Madam Bu Ning Singjari. Technical session ani suba sigi repertoire obigadaba koi ozahum busu koi lingyan PSC amamamtang kodol tambagi tanja adu lojege aduna ozahum gi mapam dasu respected Director High End Technical Education Dr. Rangita Bali Waikom Madam na kodol si tambigani. Nolung Naning Singh Jari, Repertoire Obigadaba Singh, Dr. M. Suresh, Associate Professor, GP Women's College. Shri S. Birajit, Assistant Professor, Manipur College. Amadi Dr. T.H. Tilakras, Assistant Professor, Ideal Girls College. Thagachari Pumnamakpu. Technical Session 2 on Higher Education, si Honabegi Damakta, Nasigi Moderator Oibiriba, Professor N. Lokendra Singh, the session Nasi Kutsanazari.
NEP to 2020 on the section on higher education. I'm extremely lucky to have a list of very, very distinguished academics, administrator, and also very experienced colleagues from a number of institutions in the state. I understand that many of us are here in this auditorium right from the morning, and I'm sure that despite a lot of other commitments and other programs, our panelists, our learned panelists, our distinguished invitees are here to give inputs in order to make higher education section in the state a successful kind of a system in the very near future. I'm extremely grateful to all the distinguished invitees and delegates who are still around in this auditorium. We are actually a little bit behind the time. I would like to request our distinguished panelists to kindly compress the argument as far as possible within the given time frame. If it is possible, we would be happy if you can make it slightly shorter also, because we're still having a little bit of time constraint. So let me request Dr. W. Jyotirmoy, Associate Professor of DMCTE, to say kindly speak on the theme multidisciplinary and holistic education, which is a very, very important component of the higher education section of the NEP 2020.
Mr. Moderator, sir, for giving me the opportunities to say something on this August House. As you have said, I will try to stick to the time limit. Yan hanbada ai haudringai da amakhaktang de kuna dum yam tuina workshop ta haijaba amakhaklai adu ai program si brush up tawdringai da ai haijaningba ma higher education ka school ga khenaba ani khaktang sida school sina angang machani haidana kuna dum hai mama mapa na iru jabidana chawkhutna bo hotna ba higher education sina yamna mapung pharaba macha singduna yumda pushalaga mama mapa ta kari bijagadagi haibuduni aduna ani gi approach yengakpu matamda higher education lakpu matamdadi higher education institution do kandargadi government chawkhutpa khara watkani sini kuna hairise aduna institution je chawkhut hanbasi push up to biraba government gi approach sida yengbiragadi yam kanagani haiba sigi idea sidani aina sigi NEP gi matang sida thamjeningi se hanbada akoina haijeningi si rusa 2.0 guidelines sida akoi paisa yamna pikare 7900 crores ni aina red line da thamjeri be se 55 crores 100 crores si sing se government da akoi offer to be gai haidena rusa na pikare adubu piriba paisa sing se manipur gi da akoi laibak yam thibadi akoi 30-40 crores se gen phanghogde 7900 ki maram sida kari maram gi no haibada number 4 column da aina thamjeri be se phangakadabu sida akoi gi mark lay 2015 10 5 haidana akoi number wakalam 1 da yauri base minimum akoi 3 lakhs 1 crore 100 crore so loge hai targadi 3.5 lakh point chopu taba manipur da di akoi 3 yobu institution amta leiti khoi digi wang base 288 khatane adu target akoi kadai digi paisa lakani this is number 1 then number 2 number 3 column da yauri ba akoi gi student teacher ratio se 1:10 digi na 1:20 leiba targadi 20 marks phangani hai adubu manipur gi anamba institution sing da di akhuni yengba matamda teacher student ratio se 1:9 1:8 yam name na leiba ma natraga 1:70 da leiba ma variances yam thengnai masi thengnari bangai di akoina funding agency dagi paisa lobusi yamna wagani sigi approach ni aina NEP se haina na bahona jari se number 1 NEP sida hanje haira ibase khoi single stream higher education haire masi haira ko matamda di DM college of teacher education gumba leiriba B.Ed kumbase after 9 after mase lokthokron hai moise multidisciplinary ongadabani han haibam yaure aduna B.Ed khaktang tawbo yararoi BCI na lobo law college ki su law khaktang tawbo yararoi kari tawgadigi haibasini then moi akhoi gi affiliated system university da leirmi se akhoi gi sir na yam mamang da panmi khre ayam sang haijararoi over the course akhoi phase out toro haire adu tawbo taragadi akhoi autonomous ongadra multidisciplinary ongadra haibasini marak sida amuk leiri base gross enrollment ratio se aikoina aikoigi si 50% by 2035 to leyo hai ado akoi manipur gi se hoji 31.8% lai ado regadi akoi 2035 to di akoi 62% gross enrollment ratio se akoi yobungam gadra sigi sima ai mayam mafam sida thamjari then NEP gi policy sida hairi basi 2030 da kari haige haiba matamda aikoi at least there should be one last multidisciplinary hairakpa matamda akoi professional course singsu amamam hapo on hairakpani adu hapo haibase 2030 dagi horo then by 2040 dadi akoi kari haige dagi haiba matamda every institution should be a multidisciplinary institution all hai multidisciplinary institutions akoi gi professional course lakpa taragadi self sufficient oiba self sustainability layo haibani akoi gi college leiriba singsina masingam gidra haibase akoi munna khanaba mathau tabraina khanjai sigi report sima singamba taragadi NEP na hairiba sa akoi gi multi my NEP sima na moi masana so haijai kari haigeda fourth industrial revolution oigani haidana aduna fourth industrial revolution se akoi na multidisciplinary lakpa taragadi akoi na yam chawna toina change lakpa ngamgani na hai then NEP da amu hairi basi kari haige da ozagi appointment sida timeline akhoi progression leiroi yam phaba targede PO hairi then atopa mo na National Research Foundation haidana hojikti akhoi gi institution na research na foundation tobo yabagi room ama PO hai China gi di project 385 and 1998 ta tawgre adudigi 9 institution tawdana khangat pa hogre akhoi gi di hojibo po lakpasi yamna wali adu thengu thenga lakpasi yamna phayena khanjai then atopa amadana NEP da pi ribase multidisciplinary education research universities and masigumba meru hariba institutions IIT IIM gumbada lakpa multidisciplinary gumba PO hai masi akoida leiba yagadra teacher education gumba universities sama yan hana toragadi yagadra haibisina koina hangjari base then magi policy sina akoi complete overhaul and high overhaul si Canada toguni syllabus da akoi pedagogy da assessment da toro haina high han leramba syllabus ki examination sina employability ki da yam chawo problem nere aduna syllabus change so haiba ma then atopa ma na mafum khutimok da CBCS lai magi credit point 210 220 lakpa honare masi lakpa matam da akoi na akoi ki CBCS to da taragadi akoi di pass out to giba satra singa se mafum matai da ming chanba the possibility lay Masisima Aquina Yam Chowna not the Huay. Then institutional restructuring and consolidation. Sida Sida Aquina Yamna Lightona Laboyawi Manipur the Dingasai Minister Nusupan Wikiba Hoy Nak Hypersen Naki Mahuta Hujiti graded accreditation Lakani and Hairi A1 A2 AC1 AC2 and a Lakpataragadi Aquida Amuke Henawabare Yamna Paba institutions in the mark Henapibagi Hairi A1 A2 da equipped Palibasicari Haged 992 crores Pangani High AC1 AC2 the deep Sayam the Pangwagi Wari Yogdi Aduna Magi the high BDC insensitized Haidise Mana Nakutoruba assessed over Wangiba institution in Pashapini Asonmadi Pashapiro Haibigi Ama Enipida Magi hidden meaning the Amayawi Masisima Imayam the Hizening Atopamana Magi the Piriba institutional restructuring the Mani Pirise higher education ITEI is a cluster when say Mohidana Mase Equi Manipur the Yamna Matuta Brana Kali Equina Yengumatamda was August Satra ratios Oza 57 labor Satra Pekha Pasto Pekha appear to was a 64 labor was 157 the Satra 153 Kanote 1:1 Gipeka the labor Yauri Adu Butaraka the Haying Nak Lakumatam the Aquigi institution since a point Pangaroi any piggy equipe Lakumatam the institution Mutalo Havapay Adu Kokanabigi the Mukta Equina Aquigi higher education institution since a cluster wise the Hubuse Yamatota Brian Kali some Hyderabad example when I have the December Makai level college group ama magi cluster ama Thawal Makai level college institution cluster ama Adumina Sahuba Taragadi Aquing Gamgatra senior Aquina hygienic Tanzania. Then Atopa Mana Aquigi institutions sing 3 types of institutions Sidia Quigi Sarana Yam Twin Panbigre I Adam Samjareke Breast Matam later Vanina but Magi institutions that my last row the high say one category to another jump to Wayani Hena. Aquina, autonomous Olamagan, Lorakanda, teaching university Olakanda, research incentive university, Oibiyai, Hebsemana High. Then Atopamada multiple entry and exit Sisu Yamna saying Sir Commissioner among the Panmigre 1 year we're going to certificate 2 we're going to diploma Madam this is vocational Hapon Heidi 4 years in the Lakpayari see the bachelor degree with research and Heidi Aduda Atopa point normal I say academic bank of credit Hibus in the academic bank of credit see university see a Yogurgadi Yadi 3 Yogurgadi Aduna quit the lady by university sings a 3 Yahuda Bataragadi Magi credit Otopa the Chaloi Aduna Yamna concern to be was a Hosic academic A, B, C, say UGC na order to cre, adu 3 of the institutions in the Yam Nawabigi Amalay, PZ Gisu, when structure to change socre, Masisa Nayam, to in Habicre, Aduna A, PZ ga, PSZ Maram Sida de Aquay, Mayam Nehena, Hangabang Actanina, 4 years to Mukuduna, 1 year Katang to we are 3 years to Pudana, 2 years Gida, PZ courses, when he Hibase, seizing Sema, a Hibasing Yam Harry. Atopa Madana, I vocational dance I serve Haviki, I quit Manipur, India is a vocational only 5% lay and high. By 2025, I quit vocational say Hosic Kano Gadabani, I quit every student should have one vocation or other and high. Other Siki vocation see Lakumatam Dadi, I quit CBCS Lakumatam Dadi 4 years bachelor degree program Dadi, Satra Amadan Amanatra Amayahulu and high. Al Pigaduri say one area or another area, the Natabamai liberal arts superior. Different approaches of vocational skills the PBU and then Yam Toina Masi the Pen Mayauri and Masisma Mayam the hygienic one. Then, optimal learning environment and support for the students and high optimal learning environment to the institutional development plan IDP sida am to in high college sigi my vision missions my 5 years ke doguni 10 years ke doguni high was autonomous oibang gamgudra mana university oibang gamgudra high was akoina wasi saro high masi simaksu nakida akoi point kun hene yawi masi tawbiu hadana then mayam na yam to in high ne light ba satra gi why hena adubu socio economically disadvantaged group ki damakta aikoi NEP da yam chongna palli masida haiba matamda summers type of hostel akoi hostel da angang free da lehenba then national scholarship portal angang sina pekha pass chawraga paisa handu haidana equip
kindly wind up the argument.
Okay, thank you sir adigi atopa mana aikoina yauri basi open distance learning simusu pibiro haidana haidi masi singse hairaga ai gi program se sida losin jarage thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have listened to a very, very illuminating kind of presentation from Dr. Jyotirmoy. I think we can have a joint discussion after the presentation is over. Just to save time as well as energy. Now, may I request Mr. K.S. Dinesh Kumar Singh to give the presentation. The topic is Integrated Higher Education System, including teacher education.
Slide over. Respected moderator, sir, Kaikam Reserva, academic Hilit Singh, my dear friends, colleagues, and official executives. Sigumba yamna hena thodongna mapung orba platform sida sigumba discussion gi tanjam khak pibig bidong sinbiru singbu han makta thaga chaw pungdok chari mayam punam makpu kai khumna buchare ngasigi topic se hana commissioner respected commissioner sir na mamangi keynote address ta yam phajana pi graba dugumba saruk am khakta yaw grabani vision of teacher education in national education policy 2020 sida koina saruk yaraga haijabani ahan bada koina magi teacher education gi haudringe mangda yam phajana NEP gi mamangda highlight to se making India a global knowledge superpower through education to make nation an equitable and the vibrant knowledge society in yawe sikai gi no ha kanda oza jing sina satra sing se sema akanda satra sing sina tungi future sing sida saruk yaba haunabagi achauba human resource management amasung creativity kudimak school dagi university dagi classroom dagi nation gi fate secret to haunaba mamita akoina vision of NEP 2020 se koina yengkanda oza sing sina to make teachers architect of nation's future ani am seng yaure aduga to let the foundation of teaching profession from the beginning not by chance oza sing se koina thabak phangtrakanda any magi profession si leitrakanda mahai masing si tamurakanda phangtrakanda oza oisalakpasina magi satragi magi life ta oza ji professional sam yaudaba magi attitude leitabasina satra sing manggi machak orakpa du sing si da sek tawi aduga empowering teachers through most standard form of blending model of teaching and the pedagogical skill through global level IT platform hai hujik sing si kari gi no hai kanda koi no horen samjan jarage hujik anoba national education policy gi magi target oriented orisi kai no class 6 ta gi decoding tam biro hare khudam moina adana coding sing si machine learning artificial intelligence school level gi yorpa kanda di school level gi angang sing si tak doribo oza sing si han hai batayo hanigi leiriba traditional legacy da yumpham oiba textbook parga like takpa duga not making policy si tauranu adana hariba singsi akoi na angang oringi di hauna magi critical thinking ngam creativity khuding maksa ngamna bo hona biro and hayawe aduga akoi na sida darkar leisi kai na kan needs of curriculum and pedagogical left akoi da ngasai de gi koi na neinaba matamda for the last many sessions makok tagi so hai tare manipur da huji se curriculum left natraga pedagogical left haina curriculum amsung pedagogical issues me amsigi right from the school level to the university magi compendium of magi institution me amsi pulla kanda knowledge sharing tawrakanda magi state ki su natraga national level da curriculum natraga pedagogical challenge sing sikram hain tawgada ke se khoi khujik phawba kya leitri hain hai tare masima yam palle adoga inside of this education se sai gi mang de ngang wi speaker na su du matte khara yaugre kon higher education institute offering 4-year bed will ensure experts in various field hai maram di lakadori ba sahi sida this education se 4-year onto akanda ITP ki saruk si olakadori ni horen aduga hani gi lerama 2-year model si loina mak 2030 de ma si loina muthakro haina haire single koi ICI sing si loina muthakro hairam nina and to make grooming teachers free from compartmentalization knowledge domain oza sing se ma mana amam tang khangaga la kanda oza obi mi hota loina intermediate or multidisciplinary approach the subject khudimuk sing si gi loina mak idea me am chila kan oza oina gi profession se create togadam ni haire duga to create opportunity for dual major subject in graduate level hanagi leramba single major haitare mana tamakpa singsuna PG level da tambagi mahutta hojikti ITP natraka teacher education 4 years lakpa matam da de subject ani da ma se offering pirakadori multidisciplinary approach ki han modality se 4 year ITP se sine han ku thaba oidori ni model se da de koina ITP multidisciplinary haira kanda ina khanjaba da di arts science ani hang se sikhak nate multidisciplinary haitare the chance of the credits and the opportunity will be given to the students or the learners whenever or wherever he demands to learn it. Adumba opportunity piba mafam duni compartmentalization lairaga di science arts hangtar so adum multidisciplinary adum oidri haina khale. Aduga PhD courses in teaching education needs credit based courses in teaching pedagogy and education. Hanagi leramba magi PhD gi leriba topic ta tawba khuding mak tunataba credit amamam yaur kanda teaching the pedagogy the education gi mafam da yaur kanda chathara kadam ne na palle. The present status of teacher education say any graduate can undergo 2-year BEd course and the 2-year MEd course after obtaining BEd or other equivalent course. Tamning mamina BEd tambe subject khuding mak koi na koi college gi experience ta magi subject se punamak tamure tamba ya ba tamura kanda thabak se phangdra kanda BEd tamba la ekai gnu school oja hoina doi tari magi capital investment mangon da mangriba matam pasha mangriba national gi asset myam se loi mang kanda magi jil du yaudra kanda oja oirage last hope ne na lakwa sine de koi create we are have si platform ni JS Burma commission na 2012 ta kari hage bu teacher education institutes in India has more than 10,000 states koi certificate yon ba certificate pi ba du gum institute oire aduna masi curve tawdraga di quality dimension in teacher education si yara roi have de gi koi TI gi na IT pa integrated teacher education program se koi na introduce tawnu honare the brilliant students are not groomed for teaching profession karigi no mana afaba singdi oza oibagi mangonda leiriba threshold sing se kem khangdre oza oiba kanda kari subject changi se khak tamu ba gai tamura kanda la kosina mangonda khudong cha da ba thoe na akoi da thengne ana urgency of reshaping teacher education hairagadi akoi da 4-year integrated teacher education program should be established in multidisciplinary college and university sai mang da habi gi speaker na so habi gre for the recent past manipur ki cabinet decision law kanda college manga sai minister ko honorable minister so habi gre college manga si teacher education ki 4-year integrated teacher education tawrani na takpire but sigi matang na khoi na nei ne ba yabase 4-year integrated teacher education se kari program BEd ki oidori secondary oidori bra elementary oidori bra element degi science oidori bra arts oidori bra haibani sing or special education oidori bra haibani sing ba BEd ki makhal mayam tholakani it is not mentioned huji pho clarify tawdri masi tawba kan sida suki matik akoida hena khudong chabor kani maram di dual major p doina Koguduri boza se kanano hakuduri subjects ne kaino karam college identify tarokanda primary hakani karam badana secondary hakani karam bada science hakani karam bada arts hakani aduga ITP hangiba college khudimukte dual major p bungamoi maram di dual major p bungamgoda ba subject ITP ga ani pun bayaga da se special oina khara nata di kasungamoi masi it is the need of the awareness which dagi hona identify ta huda tare heng magi matam se la kan da khoida wa bogeni the minimum qualification of school teachers by 2030 se will be ITP degree holder oirani haire hanagi 2-year degree in leram si yaroi hairam nina hausi di enbil lere ITP se koi tahodraba 2030 ki lora kuma tamda koi na adum progress taw leitar gadi akoi da chang kador employability ki question se mapan gi mina natraga topati gi lakwa singna changpa natraga hoida oja wat gi crisis se soiduna mayong narak pa yai na khat mayam da thamjage aduga higher education institute offering 4 years BEd may open 2-year BEd for graduate with special subject and a 1-year BEd for graduate of 4 years I do the option gini 4-year hang ba sing do the 2-year gi BEd ki graduate sing natraga special subject 1 year loirak pa sing na ma chathaba yai na pan mani simadi ai ko yam kan hajaroi aduga loisalak pa matam da sigi di kitang khak ai mayam da thamjage making it happen in teacher education se kari no hai kanda opening academic counseling units in school colleges to identify the goal of teacher education. Oza oiduri se hayeng nang na si tamakanda oza oibe yagani haibe se school gi class 12 na traga 11 12 tambi bangang dagina hauna ta hudragadi hayeng ITP tamduri se oza oibe yanana bani aduga nang atopa PG level am the special paper da su yabagi opportunity leigadamni haibagi academic counseling se school level dagi platform am da sagalakta tardi hayeng lakaduri besing se mama pamrang khangdana du mina tamne na tamba yabagi ngong lei aduga topa mana bridging the gap between SCERT and the university level for teacher education mamang da su ngasai morning session da yawi kiba SCERT the school education gi magi platform the curriculum pedagogy and the related issues me amgi university su tawe but there is a wide gap from a lay school la tawrisiga university tawrisi hujikte holistic approach ne maram di school gi level da kayam tamki ge according to school gi level da tamo university da karai di hawdori higher secondary da kai di hawdori haibun sing chal loina hawrakadori ne aduna hoji lakadori ba akoi gi syllabus samsung curriculum NEP na target tawrisi di kari no haikanda vertical rise ne horizontal movement na te ba makha da gi la akanda mathak ta kayam na haigalakadori ge se khani yengani aduna high reversing se SCERT team sung university level gi teacher education se bridging to bom sangi mase khoi stakeholders sing sina maduge minus decision me am lobi rakanda kari mong da sem ga te ke ai thamjaningi aduga coordination of school and the TEI for around the year practical input se khoi teacher education institute se manipur da bet college se hojik se 15 lei 15 si hindi matandani tungana leiba aduga 13 amadi kamai to give secondary education ni loina mak chamana ba loina monotona soiba but practically moi NCT na haiba de moi gi akoi na experience tawna ba practical unit of school lamum laigadam ni hai ado high rising sigi magi oiba provisions sigi karai lei karam ba school da tawrino sahi mod practical unit ki atawi numit ki ani tawge se there is no regulation from the university ai boina delay adu practical in reality do onthorok pa kanda di school ga college sing sigi ani gi gap yam sauna lei aduga continuous professional development for neo-literate adults say ai neo-literate adults size singa sai mamang su yaugre hojikti global IT platforms ni akoina literate society in high si hana gi leramba lari khaiba certificate pai bu khak natna hojik leiriba societies the environment se da ma se adapt to ngamba IT da bu oiro logical thinking the reasoning the loina mak na sing duni aduna high rising se koi asigum sing se sangi aduna loishalakda mayam gi sabagi mamang da ina thamjening se to establish a state central education, teacher education, and a research university to fulfill the dream of teacher education in the state as per NEP 2020. University gumam laikanda right from the primary level to the university's research unit and the teaching methodology puna maksi tak ngam daragadi like akoi university teacher akoi MTU laibudumaina lai taragadi future will be very bright in the times to come. Thank you once again.
Now, may I request Professor W. Chanbabu Singh, Registrar, Manipur University, to kindly give his presentation. Theme is Governance and Regulation.
Respected moderator, sir, and distinguished panelists, and all the learned faculty members of different colleges and the Manipur University and the Nandamani University, and all the officers of Government of Manipur. Well, we talk all about this National Education Policy 2020 since morning. And it's really a very good thing that we have discussed many great and important issues. In fact, when I check to this printed booklet of NEP 2020, the real mandate in that NEP 2020 lies with the current education system and making it holistic, flexible, and multidisciplinary. And why this is going to make in that way? It is just because we want to make, to make our country and our India a dream fulfilled and new India, which is full of promises, and that is what it is given there. When we check with that, the we always talk about the National Higher Education Commission. And when this Higher Education Commission of India is formed through that NEP 2020 program and its implementation, there are 4 key verticals. One talks about the regulation, the second talks about accreditation, the third talks about funding, and the fourth one talks about the standard. All these 4 key issues are the core component when you talk about the governance and its regulation. When we say governance, there are many key problems which are coming up out here at the time of governance. When we say governance, that is going to have a great change from the one which we have already seen in the education system. And when we say governance out here in the higher education, new education, National Education Policy 2020, it talks about the establishment of board of governors of each and every higher education institution. Now, in the higher education institutions, we are going to form this, board of governors. Board of governors are going to, plan for the, development of that higher education institution. And in that way, universities and colleges might try to establish their own board of governors. Board of governors will decide all about the development and its activities of the college, starting from execution of the regulations which the government of India is going to provide. The second issue is all about this funding and infrastructure requirements and the faculty requirements. And at the same time, how this higher education institution is going to achieve its excellence in education and academics. And these are all depend purely on the board of governors. And here you see, when we say board of governors are on the other hand is going to abide by the rules and regulations and the guidelines which is prepared by the National Higher Education Regulatory Authority. That means National Higher Education Regulatory Authority is going to provide a guideline. Within that specified guideline and the framework, each higher education institution is going to establish and form the board of governors. And the board of governors is going to execute and implement all those guidelines which are given in the National Higher Education Regulatory Authority. It means it's just like UGC has framed the regulations and the guidelines, and we are implementing that sort of regulation and the guideline in our respective universities and the colleges. In the same manner, this is going to change. But the only thing is that, the way things are done earlier, it is going to change by the emergence of the board of governors out here in the case of higher education institutions. This is the thing. Again, board of governors will appoint leaders of the higher education institution. For that purpose, board of governors are going to identify and form one eminent expert committee. So the eminent expert committee is going to establish within the board of governors, and the board of governors, after establishing this, eminent expert committee will appoint the academic leaders and institutional leaders. This is the process. That means enough autonomy is going to sanction purely to the higher education institutions with relation to appointment of academic leaders in the higher education institutions. Now, what will be the modality of establishing this board of governors? It is not yet clear, because the guideline of NEP 2020 is not clearly mentioning all those compositions of the board of governors, and who is going to be the chairman of this board of governors, who are the people and members to be included in this board of governor, and who is going to be the member secretary. All these guidelines are not yet finalized so far, but I believe this will be done very soon. So this board of governors is going to prepare institutional development plan. So the institutional development plan will talk about infrastructure. Institutional development plan will talk about the holistic achievement of all the goals and the directions and the targets which are basically identified as per NEP 2020. the IDP and the Board of Governors will prepare in that IDP all about the faculty strength and the other expansion plan. All these things will be discussed out there. But can we imagine that IDP will be able to work independently under this Board of Governors? And I don't think so, because the state government and the government of India has its own allocation of fund for the higher education and education sector. So how to collaborate this IDP with the Board of Governors and EEC, this Eminent Expert Committee, then with this National Higher Education Regulatory Authority. Okay, and at the same time, on one hand, the government of India and the state government. So these, say 4 or 5 key, key players in the whole system need to function in a very strong and a coordinated manner. Otherwise, the concept of the implementation of NEP 2020 will not be an easy task for us. When you look at, say again, to the regulatory framework, there are various issues at that. And when we say regulatory framework is going to focus more on innovation, and the second one is purely on result of excellence. So innovation and the result of excellence is the key paradigm shift which we are going to reflect in this regulatory system and regulatory framework. When we say the regulating of higher education institution, okay, there are few other factors which are coming up. One is the distinct functions of these regulators. The second one is provision of education, provision of funding, provision of accreditation, and provision of maintaining academic standard and academic settings. All these components are emerging in this the concept of regulatory system. And for fulfilling all these things, National Higher Education Regulatory Authority is going to monitor all this regulating system again, just like what we have done, I have just mentioned with relation to the governance issue. And here in this case, the primary mechanism of the regulatory system is introducing one of the very important aspects under this regulatory system is all about what we call as, accreditation component, an accreditation, regulating body. And this, accreditation is going to focus on some parameters. One is what will be the basic norms, disclosure, good governance, outcome, and all these things will be monitored by establishing one organization, public organization, what we call as National Accreditation Authority. There is one such organization in India which is acting in the same manner what this National Accreditation Authority, which NEP 2020 has identified. It is all about National Accreditation Council. This is NAC is doing this responsibility, and at the same time, NAB is also doing this type of responsibility today. And so, under this regulatory framework, we are going to establish this National Accreditation Authority, and this National Accreditation Authority is going to look after this particular aspect of accreditation and outcome of the courses and programs. Those things will be done. Then we have General Education Council, which is going to establish out here, and this will talk about graduate outcomes and program outcomes. And these graduate outcomes and program outcomes will have its linkage with the National Skill Qualification Framework and the National Higher Education Qualification Framework, which is again emerging as another organization and a platform here is in this regulatory authority system. Then we have to establish again the National Professional Studies Council. There are various councils like ICAR, the Veterinary Council of India, NCTE, and all these things will be integrated under one specific platform called as General Education Council, and this is again another body which is coming up. Then Another, say, component which is coming up in the, say, regulatory authority is all about the establishment of Higher Education Grants Commission, which will talk about funding, which will talk about, say, financing, which will talk about, say, scholarships, which will talk about, say, projects and its funding. And now, basically, see, this perspective is partly looked after through, say, Higher Education Funding Agency, which is presently, say, implementing its schemes in India. And the Ministry of Education, so under this Ministry of Education, we have the Higher Education Funding Agency, and they are, say, presently, say, handling these issues. And now this is going, say, to shift to, say, Higher Education Grants Commission. And these are, say, some of the, say, key regulatory bodies which are going to emerge when this NEP 2020 is implemented. Now, sir, I'll just wind up in 50 seconds. Just because of these developments, what is going to happen in the higher education institution? Say, one is, we are going to, say, amend our University Act and Ordinance. This is very important because nomenclature is going to change. And we have to start working in this line, very efficiently. Second is, say, in the university system, the decision-making chain starts from the departmental board of studies, then to school board of studies, then academic council, then finance committee, and then executive council, then court. And as nomenclatures and the way of functioning in the universities are going to change, then we are also, say, start working, and thinking in this line, so that, say, how can we integrate and amend our act and ordinances, so that all these things can be integrated. And this is, say, some of the key challenges which we are going to have at present. And well, of course, the university is fully ready for taking up all these, say, initiatives, and we have already started, addressing some of the governance issues and the regulations related issues, like, say, suppose the course curriculum and how to implement it and upgrade it. And for, say, the implementation of, say, integrated the teacher education program, 4-year integrated teacher education program, the university has already, say, constituted a committee for finalization of this syllabus, and they are seriously working on that. And within 10-15 days, things will be finalized. And in that way, say, things started, say, to move, and say, we need, say, to think this, say, new education, National Education Policy 2020 in a very consolidated manner. And we, at the very outset, need to own this NEP 2020, say, in our mind and heart. Now, only after that, we will be able, say, to identify, say, how we can, say, operationalize by streamlining these, say, regulating guidelines and, say, governing issues which we are going to come up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Chanbabu. May I make a request to the learned academics and panelists, because this paper constitutes the core and the fundamental, some of the core and the fundamental aspects of the operationalization of this new policy. So for this paper, can we have a little bit of discussion, because there are so many things, so many issues, so many new concepts, so many new sectors of governance, and so many new, issues that are coming up. I think if you can, say, permit us 2-3 minutes of discussion on this, otherwise we might just forget it. Is it possible? Is there any question on this paper? Because this constitutes a very, very core component of the entire, say, NEP 2020 on higher education sector. Because here we are talking about the Higher Education Council, then we are talking about the say, Board of Governor, and then we are talking about the appointment of the high administrators, administrative authority of the university or the institutes. Then we are talking about so many other things. If learned academics and friends, if you have anything to know before it is cooled down, I think it's better to strike when it is hot.
Oh, then, okay. Let me just ask one question about this HEPA, Higher Education Funding Agency. Is this HEPA is replacing UGC? That's my question. Higher Education Funding Agency, is it replacing University Grants Commission?
Well, as per my understanding, there are a lot of confusions between UGC and the Ministry of Education at present. Earlier, when we need fund, we are supposed to write directly to the UGC, but for any development grant, except say, faculty requirements and non-teaching staff requirement, if we need any development grant for the university, we are supposed to apply through a Higher Education Funding Agency. If we need, say, additional faculty and additional staff, for that purpose, we write to the UGC. Those things are done out there. We are supposed to buy, say, equipments for the university that we are approaching to the UGC. But if you want to construct, say, a building and want to expand the facilities and other research laboratories besides equipment, then we are supposed to apply only through Higher Education Funding Agency. And say in that case also, if your request for a fund to the Higher Education Funding Agency is more than say this one is 100 crore, then that will go to this IFD for final approval and discussion. And that way things become much more complicated today. And Manipur University also so far could not say get this fund from the ministry, because say many other issues are coming up. Ministry says that the fund is not there, and then at the same time, say in front of us, we are going to expand say our research facilities and a number of classrooms. And as number of faculty members are increasing, we need to buy say facilities for them. And those things are not happening because we are not able to get fund from the Higher Education Funding Agency. On one side, what you are asking is right. For some aspects, purely all about say library books and faculty recruitment and staff requirements. And then for that purpose, we are writing to the UGC. And but for additional physical infrastructure and expansion of say other infrastructure and facilities, then we are supposed to write to Higher Education Funding Agency. The things are now divided.
One more question, please.
Yeah.
As to my humble knowledge, this HEPA is financing to higher education institutions in the form of loan, payable in 5 years.
Yeah.
So, what will be the fate of higher education institutions? Whether they will develop any, resources or resource mobilization? And so far, to my knowledge, in Manipur, there is no such institution which it can raise any kind of resource mobilization. It cannot do. So whatever spent in infrastructure is already spent. It is not returnable.
Yeah.
So what will be its implication to our state particularly?
That is very true. If your internally generated fund is lesser, okay, you will not be able to get more money from the Higher Education Funding Agency. The more you can show your internally generated fund, the higher you can demand from the ministry. Because say our university is generating 10 crore through internally generated fund, then you can request them for say 100 crores. And that is the thing, because 90% they will give in the form of loan, and 10% say university should be able to generate, and that is the concept out here. In reality, we are not say returning this money. This is given in the form of assistance, but say the funding agency treat it in the form of loan. And so say if I can say give you 10 rupees, then you will give 90 rupees. If I can give only 8 rupees, then you will give say 80 rupees. That is the concept. So through that, the more you generate, the higher we will be able to see to request for fund from the say higher education funding agency. That is why the poor universities are not say able to get money from the ministry, because you do not have much money in your hand and in your account. And that is some of the very, very challenging issue. That is why when we talk about governance issue, one of the very important critical issue out here is the question of fund. And the governance and the implementation of all the NEP related programs and the policies, and the fulfillment of this objective purely lies with the amount of fund the government is able to commit.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Chanbabu.
I want to supplement, sir. Just like Professor Chanbabu is saying, recently in Manipur University also we had applied one big program for Sophisticated Instrumentation Center. Now it has been changed, the name is Manipur University Sophisticated Instrumentation Center Music. So around 80 crores we had applied to UGC earlier. But they are saying that it is not, they are not financing agency now, so it is better to refer to this HEFA, Higher Education Finance Agency. And I think this agency, they are going to give funds, but it is 80 to 2080. 80 they will give, and 20 we have, the host institute will have to contribute 20%. 80% they will give. So that is in the process now in Manipur University. So normally such type of big projects or programs HEFA is doing now.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Professor Razman.
Yeah.
Now, may I request Professor C.I.S. Ibohal to kindly give the presentation on the theme Research, Innovation and Ranking.
Respected moderator, Professor N. Lakendra, distinguished panelists, respected officials from the Department of Education, learned delegates, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon, you all. In fact, at the outset, I am very much thankful to the organizing team for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts and ideas on the NEP 2020 with a special reference to research, innovation, and ranking. Well, we have got so much of insights about NEP 2020, and we are just trying to have a total overhauling in the entire higher education system through this policy. Research as such, it is an important component for any of the higher education institutions, teaching, research, and extension. Well, for ranking also, even in the NAC, even NIRF, NBA, or for that matter, any other ranking system, research publications or research contribution is playing an important role. Well, research may be of various types, but to have an understanding, maybe applied research or the fundamental research, the basic research. We do it both, but normally in many of the institutions in India, we are focusing more on the fundamental research. Applied research is relatively low. And we are to just relook on this component. And in fact, your research, it helps in creating a new knowledge, and also it facilitates in making a better teaching learning processes in the classroom too. So that's why Research is one, I need not to explain much of it. We can do the research in the hardcore science and technology areas. And we have STEAM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now it's going to be integrated as a multidisciplinary approach in higher education system. And for that, humanities, social science are also to be incorporated. And for doing all these things, we just have one provision in the NEP 2020, that is National Research Foundation. They will be taking care of a robust research environment in the nation. That is very true. They will be taking care about the research of the faculty members for the peer-reviewed research work and publications, and even the in-house publication is to be encouraged in many of the institutions today. For getting the NAAC accreditation for higher grades, institutes having their own in-house publications of research journals definitely will be getting good this one advantage. So that's why all the faculty members in the colleges, universities should have a good opportunity of doing research. Even the institutions are now going to be graded from teaching college to teaching university, then to research university. So that means it's coming up and focus on the research-oriented activities. And for that, I just would like to suggest our state also should have one state research foundation or state research fund, maybe under the Director of Higher Education, so that whatever is a contemporary related research, maybe for the global climate change in the global arena, or the state-specific areas for the transport, for the environment, for safe drinking water, for any other social-related issues about the gender discrimination, whatnot. Any of these areas which may be of immense benefit for the policy initiatives, that research needs to be taken up. So that's why research foundation at the state level should be implemented. In fact, investment in the research in India is relatively low. We are having about only 0.69% of the GDP in the research. Whereas in the developed countries like US, it's quite good amount. That means more than 2.8% of the GDP is invested for doing research. And a small state like Israel, they are having about 4.3 of the GDP and 4.2 for the South Korea. So that's why with the research in the higher education institutions, many of the problems could be solved. Even today, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the kind of a research activities taken up in the Oxford University is to be appreciated very well. Whatever COVID vaccine is AstraZeneca, it is the outcome of the research finding of the Oxford University. Though they had been established centuries ahead of us, however, is the university, they are providing good kind of research finding, and they are trying to contribute for the betterment of the mankind. So that importance needs to be taken care of. Well, with that, there is one more provisions for innovations, research, innovations, and for that matter, all the higher educational institutions should have startup and incubation centers. So that's why as on today, except 1 or 2 institutions in the state, we do not have any kind of a startup centers in any of the higher education institutions. So that's why taking care of that, we need to just integrate whatever is the learning taking place with the society, with the industry. So industry linkages with the academics is the very much need of the hour today. And for that matter, startup centers, incubation centers are to be promoted in all the colleges and universities in that state. And with that, we may be able to organize startup challenges, innovation challenges, Innovations could be in any areas, maybe in the field of study or in the administration, in any activities of the life. So that's why innovation, entrepreneurship, these are the drivers of economy in any of the developed nations today. So that's why India is envisioning to become $5 trillion economy by 2025. And for that matter, we are required to have a radical change in our mindset, radical change in the talent landscape. And for that matter, higher education institutions are supposed to play a pivotal role to provide right kind of manpower, right kind of a workforces. And for that, India is envisioning to be a global knowledge superpower. So that's why NEP 2020 must address on this count too. And in fact, for research, for innovation, collaboration is a must. Collaboration with the industry, collaboration in the institutional level, joint research, joint work, only then we may be able to come up with good research findings. Doing standalone, I think definitely we'll be having so much of difficulties. So that's why we like to encourage all the colleges and institutions to come up for collaborations in whatever possible manner for industry, for the industrial exposure of the students, for the internship, for any other kind. Because our students today, they are lacking something somewhere. That's why employability is very, very poor. And for the India as a whole, when we check up some data, it talks that every year India produces about 6 lakh graduates, BA, BSc, BCom, out of which only 10% is readily employable. Then 90% is not because of lack of certain skill set. And even among the engineers too, only 25% is readily employable when they produce about 3.6 lakh engineering graduates. 75% is not. So that's why we need to provide right kind of a training, human skill, technical skills, and professional skills. And this skilling and reskilling of all these students and the employees, for that matter, in different stages of their career is needed. And vocational education is again another component of the skill development activities, and in the NEP 2020, as a part of innovation and various other activities, it has to revamp and re-imaging this vocational education. For that matter, by 2025, India should provide 50% of their students to vocational exposure. And for that, I just would like to propose for the vocational education, just like in Delhi, they have already started vocational entrepreneurship and skill development universities. Assam, the other day, they have started the skill university. In Manipur also, why don't we think of having a university of entrepreneurship or the skill development? That way, curriculum designing, and for any kind of a progression from class 6 onwards, the vocational education is to be imparted, and then in the class 9, 10, and up to 12, and Central Board also, they have provided the vocational education. Now the problem is the linkage from the school and the higher secondary school to the higher education, BA, BSc, BCom, and higher degrees like master's degree. So that's why, for that, we need to have a proper channelization of the students coming in the vocational stream of study. Finally, but not least, I just would like to conclude, ranking, of course, in India, we are unable to come up in the global university ranking up to 200 level. That means our areas is something we need to rethink. But for Manipur too, whatever is the NAC is providing 7 criteria and 34 key indicators. We must work on that. And that's why when we just work one after another, many of the colleges are having good score in one parameter, but in many other parameters, they are unable to do well because of some reasons or the other. Even in the Manipur University too, to my experience, about the expenditure, the capital expenditure per student. When you just take up, it's very, very, very low. That means in terms of library, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of computers, so on and so forth. That's why my suggestion over here is that in order to increase the ranking status of the universities and the colleges, we are to work in a concerted manner and then visualize the diversity of the students too. In many of the institutions, we do not have the diversity. And some of the institutions, just like a few colleges where some professional courses like biotechnology is offering, I have heard students from Mizoram, students from Nagaland is coming for study. It's a good sign. And that's why probably that college will be getting a good score for the NAC accreditation too. So that's why I would like to encourage all the institutions to have a diversity of students from different streams of study and different parts of the country. That needs to be encouraged. That way, I believe the true spirit of NEP 2020 to become India a global superpower in the next few years down the line, it can be achieved in the true spirit of the terms. And for that, we must focus the research, innovation, ranking, and the skill development for our young boys and girls for better employability. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Next, so may I request Dr. C.S. Shilarmani Devi, Principal, DM College of Arts, to kindly give her presentation on equity and inclusion.
Thank you, Professor, Moderator, and the distinguished panelists, and the distinguished persons present here. The topic, equity and inclusion, this component is a very important component of National Education Policy 2020. We know that it is related to the history of popularization of education throughout the world. And India is also stepping up to give a focus on popularization of higher education, popularization of education. Even if the United Nations has declared that education is a universal right, everybody has a right to education and higher education, to all forms of, all stages of education. There are still, segregation of this opportunity, this privilege to the privileged group of people. For example, from the ruling class, then to the rich class, and then to the elite group. So still, many communities have been left out, have been segregated, have been deprived of the right to education and higher education. And it has taken place with the Industrial Revolution. It has taken place, this popularization of education has taken place very early in human history. And this topic, important component of National Education Policy, equity and inclusion, is related to that aspect of education. Why? Why it is very important? Education is very important at the moment when knowledge moves faster than light even knew. In this 21st century, with the advancement of technology, and it moves faster than as ever before, and the modern society is a knowledge society, we know that, and India is coming up to become a superpower in this arena. And again, education is important because it is the most effective instrument for social change. Why there are groups which are deprived of this right? this universal right, this right to education. Why? Because there are many disparities. Social disparities, economic disparities, cultural disparities. In the first session, one delegate asked a very pertinent question on the imposition of FANEC to a 13-year-old girl, whereas her classmate who happens to be a boy, who puts on the very smart and very comfortable dress. And this is the cultural discrimination, cultural disparity that exists between a girl and a boy. I'm very much struck by that question. And what is meant by equity? Equity is a process to effect equality, Even if we talk of equal opportunity, there are still disparities, there are still segregation. And the popularization of education has been blocked by these prejudiced notions, by these disparity in the cultures, in the practices, and in the economy also, and in politics also. Still, we are very much prejudiced. And to remove these disparities, these prejudiced notions, there should be a process which will effect equality, That process is meant by equity. Even if the system offers everybody to have access to it, here are some groups who cannot, or which cannot have the access, who cannot enjoy the access due to these social barriers. And among these, it is termed as socio-economically disadvantaged groups here in this caption, equity and inclusion in NEP 2020. Socio-economically disadvantaged groups. Among these groups are scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and the backward classes, including women and the other groups of people, that is the transgender. And it focuses, this area focuses on that, and many measures have been highlighted. And I would like to add one more point about why education is the most effective means of bringing transformation in our society. Because the transformation can be done without a bloody revolution, without a violent revolution. All are going to be enlightened, through this kind of movement, popularizing education, irrespective of caste, class, gender, and creed. That is why this is a very important area of NEP 2020. Then let me, since I do not have time enough, I collected last night some data from the Government of Manipur publications, from the Directorate of Statistics. The enrollment among the scheduled tribes, comparatively, the enrollment among the scheduled caste, there is still disparity, among the districts. And there is still disparity between the sexes, man and the woman. And there are so many disparities. Please scan through it. I don't have time to reflect on that. And in India also, the same disparity exists. District-wise, local-wise, gender-wise, and the group-wise. And so the target for, we have noted, the target for India is to attain by 2035, after 15 years, it is 50% GER, gross enrollment ratio. Now it is, in Manipur, it is little above 30. Wajalandoni has an accurate, information about data, I used to forget. For India, for Manipur, it is a little above 30, and for India, it is below. Manipur is, it is a little advanced comparatively with the other states of India or India as a whole. So we are lucky that we are still interested in education. But if we look, district-wise and community-wise, we still find many disparities among the people of Manipur also. And I find, Tamenglong, and I find Ukhrul, enrollment ratio for the girl students is still very low. Please find the data also. Then let me analyze a little bit about the steps to be taken up by the government from the NEP, from the text of NEP. Here are some 10 steps to be taken up by the government. And this NEP, I have just cited that this topic is very important. The very first paragraph and the second paragraph of NEP focuses on, these two paragraphs focus on equity and social justice and inclusion. And for this, there are some steps cited by the government of, by this NEP, to be taken up by the government, central as well as state governments, and steps to be taken up by the higher educational institutes. There are, the steps are found to be common, but I will just cite one or two steps which are very relevant. One is this enhanced gender balance in admissions to higher educational institutes. This is very important section. This is an important step to be taken up by the governments. Then develop, support high quality higher educational institutes that teach in local Indian languages or bilingually. In the morning also it has been discussed very well. That is, teaching in the mother tongue is very important, because we have just realized the importance of research and innovation, and the creation of new knowledge. How this takes place, what is the process of, and the critical thinking. Critical thinking should start from the school level, from the early level. No rote reading, no parrot reading is allowed from the early stages of education. And at this moment, the importance of mother tongue comes up. One becomes creative only when one thinks in the mother tongue, which is associated with his culture, with his background, with his locality, and the language in which one dreams is the creative language. In my understanding, it is my phrase, my sentence that I have spoken these years, some 10 years, I think, in my classroom. I ask my students, what do you call bulbul in Tangkhul? What do you call, swallow in your language? What do you call, mairen, this pumpkin in Paite language, in Kuki? We have many children who do not know, some important objects which are very much associated with our day-to-day life in our own mother tongues. This is the handicap to create new knowledge, to start up, for the startup programs for research, for innovative research, besides practical research, or this applied research. Then higher educational, then outreach. We have taken up so many measures, so many programs, which is beyond the prescribed text, prescribed syllabus. many co-curricular activities we have taken up which are socially useful, which are to be extended to our community, to our society, which are associated with our research findings, with our, with ideas. But it doesn't reach to these ideas, do not reach these research findings, do not reach to our community. Say, for example, the Swachh Bharat program. This is very, very, disappointing to see our banks of the rivers and the banks of the canals and the banks of the streams, with liters of plastic waste, with all kinds of thrown out materials, We have been training our students in the campuses, in our educational campuses for social service, neat and cleanliness, to take these ideas and these services to their homes, to their locality, but we do not practice it. So outreaching is very important, is cited as very important in the steps to be taken up by the governments as well as by the higher educational institutes. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Oza.
I have a lot of things, but I left out everything.
We will have a discussion, joint discussion. Next, may I request Professor Rajmohan to please speak on the theme, Global Outreach of Higher Education.
A very good afternoon to all of you. Honorable Moderator Professor Anne Loken, distinguished panelists, officials of Department of Education Manipur, esteemed faculty members, one and all. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be one of the panelists in this important discussion on NEP 2020. NEP 2020 is a landmark document which proposes several structural changes in the early as well as the higher education system. This new policy will be the key to unlock the mandate to robust education system rooted in Indian ethos in a globalized education and knowledge era. This is a bold and indomitable new policy initiative taken up by the present government of India for overall national development, economic growth, equitable society, and quality education. Kudos to all stakeholders who have involved in finalizing this new vista of New Education Policy 2020 to become India a global knowledge superpower in the years to come. Global outreach of higher education, Mang Supan Vigre. I education policy important not only within the country natna atopa mapandagi su attack to bangamba adugumba education system mo oiba aduga akoigi Manipur gi or India gi education system singsi siga mapan gi leba developed countries singsi system singsiga masigi exchange program singma mayam pangtukuna akoigi outreach Manipur kaktigi natag India kaktigi natag atopa countries su masi laknan wi pan mama new education policy sig lakpa loinana खन्नबगी मतम से ओइरे हाबिसि अहम मुदे थमदनिंगी multidisciplinary education and research universities merusi matang ngasai waja ibol su yam phajena thambigre ekoi hoji hoji leiba IITs IIMs aduga iroina very recently developed the IJER Indian Institute of Science Education and Research sigumba awang bathaki education system singsi purupag iroina na ekoi gi mapan gi atop university man singsi ga koi collaboration tauba adigi multi natraga bilateral natraga multilateral level da koina punna research ki program paket menabagi matam du oire haibagi wakalon sai thamdani manamdi piriba education policy si yam maruba panamdi India should be one day superpower global knowledge superpower oikna bagi panam amagal wena yawuni na aikoi gi India manung khakti gi oina khanaba yaru masi awang bathake level da global gi perspectives da ko yemu mathau tai habisina ina thamdani ngi basi. Under the new education policy 2020, the world's top 100 foreign universities will be facilitated to operate in India through new laws. Aina, piba condition mas yauri bane education policy da. Adana, saukhatlaba develop torba mapangi institute yamama world gi ranking de yaro maya masu masi India da kusam naraga kusu India su masi work to honbi abagi policy program ama ano logo loina yabagi provision masu yawuni na soida maki masi karigumba successfully fajarwa policy si wakina implement to ngam targadi nongodi soida maki okay 2035 ki matungda mayam khanari bedu mai pak pa yabagi possibilities lai habisi ai motasu thandeningi adugo funding is a very important sai bada ibol su takpi bedu panbi gi bedu hogi GDP gi 0.69 hai sidi very low yamna pick pa migare amount hai tare aduna ngasai gi funding is very important infrastructure development matangda adugi matangda even faculty go any oro paisa yaudana yado pot am oibina koi gi leriba system singsi if global level da lake haiba targadi hauji hauji leba India gi even policies re palibal sina successfully akoina global gi level da lokpang ngodra ngamlo da haiba sisu masisu nei bagi mathak tai funding is very important. Efforts are being made to motivate more students for with postgraduate to register for PhD and take higher education is a career any field science or be social science or be not the humanities or be angang singsi maroina awang bathaki research da karak na bagi level da policy sta yawbani na awang bathaki research to hon ba haibisi da paisa yam chang poni na funding isi yamna the government aims to increase the public investment in the education sector from the current 4.3, it is 2018 to reach 6% of GDP at the earliest have sisu apava kongtang amadi ore asakre di ore adubu simang na matik sargra sarwe de bhai sisu we khana bagi mathok tai aduna khoi gi multi prong oina masagi panbigi badmane industry academy interaction to ba academy interface ama sagabesu tai phadana daka oigini habesi ai thamjani ai matang sida eno muktam uchege number of scientists and research expenditure data se koi human resource development indicators world bank ki matungina khare dilli re masi 2003 da pudhoki beda india gi si scientists per million population sida 157 kakne hoiles aduga China da 545 aduga Japan peak level lam se masida 5095 lives yam aduga mati yam kenaris sorry. See expenditure on research and development per capita see US dollar da pavda India see 5.5 lay aduga China 11.7 aduga Japan see 978 lay mai to la matang lay USA 7.705 sigi expenditure ki sang dane bhui lay ni ba global ki picture si aduga iroin na som the expenditure par scientist wena moina par ga su India ki si tawdi si population jang gun China population am hengan moina pa tam India ki 35 lay aduga China ki na 16 lay aduga khwaidagi masing yam misina ko USA wale 230 sigi sang si expenditure per scientist lay ana sai wa kana su Professor Sanma pun su pambi gi bedo ko gi Manipur University da natraga to institute sing da per student sing da kun chading tori base in terms of practical gi obe to bobe masi da lay am na small oi re adu new education policy si la ko lo na masi hengalam gi tangai padu lay have den uchabni aduga masi gi pi basi kano se progress in science and technology ki matang si sida sigi graph si masi graph si amna nei nei ngai hai tai masi yam kan na current science ta ko gi academy ne phong current science yam kuptan ne ri gi yam chaw bu kan ni discussion ne progress in science and technology ki matang si ahan ma da even ko India ki level sigi kan si straight line when almost ko gi stagnant when level film da level aduga han India ne yam wang ba ko gi publication gi form da level sing se masi China na hengi ki ba gi ma si la ko si masi graph se ko yam na nong na khanen ngai mathuk tai adu new education policy laga haiba policy si bo phajana implement to tar ga di soida mo ki akoi gi kanu si su graph si su phajana haigal kani haiba gi thaje ba si adum leje adu masi su yam important oi ba hai tare aduna akoi gi research ka mari lena bada mapan de gi university sing de gi ato country sing de gi akoi Manipur da natraga akoi gi India da lan ge haiba tar ga di masi yam na maroi na akoi Manipur da lan ge haiba tar karam makhal da akoi si excellent oi bi gai akoi gi nuclear gi is akoi na mangjin tharu da mamai da lebi have adu regional base or local base oi ba karam makhal gi sida akoi di excellent and globally excellent oi bi aba jaga kari legi ge have sim masi akoi khanraga maduda akoi paisa si thadraga awang thak research to matam soidama ki one day I'm sure apan gi akoi gi Manipur level very unique oi ba sigi jaga sida Act East policy ki corridor over jaga sida mapan gi atopa Southeast Asia gi atopa country soidam ki lakni habi gi thaje basi leje maram di amaram da ko gi mapan da tamba matam da paisa yam chang basi ko gi Manipur da particularly India da matam di paisa yam chang na ta bani na aina khamna soidam ki masi attack to ngam quality si yam phagalaba adoi tari soidam ki attack to ngam ni habi gi thaje basi ngona leje aduga asagi kari gumba ko gi world class ki rank si yauge have target ko gi publication se masi am important oi obviously awang mata ga higher education da college as well as university level le ba scholars sing oda sing khudimo si ki sa achoba contribution am le ne apsida globalization la na bokona botam da and even ko hoji togje ko science ki field khara da example pije ba nano technology example lauren kalo India si hoji 636 ko India gi le si publication se ko pa ba matam da 1991 deng 2000 hoji am henge ko hemri helam ne ko adu kirang related data se aduga China si 3000 lom sat ke 3000 hen sat ke sumaina comparison ji yengbu matam da akoi gi masing si am hantha ba hai tare masi akoi amtang ka khalam da ka oigene ba na top ranking in items of citation yenga ga su akoi gi kanu si India si am na low eri US is na 12,65,000 yo matam na akoi si 77,200 swai khak ne akoi hu le yam na pick e ba imun inak nak pada akoi gi anak pada hai tare koi South Korea ko mi da hu le 55,739 si le aduga songi percent of world si par ko matam da akoi India si am pick crap si 2.13 swai sang le tho crap koi le ana sigum gi matang si akoi na yam na ne ba matak tai aduga iroin na world class ki higher education sida ko na karam mong da ranking gi orsu NRA ranking orsu amomo orsu adigi global ki ngasa gi ranking ni yauge haiba targadi unique feature characteristics khara da ka wai masida am important or is distinctive organizational culture level da ka wai participatory leadership ki darkar wai kani culture of dedication towards students administrators proficiency in to motivate faculty better involvement of faculty in decision making collaborative environment aduga loina na support to risk taking china chingba mayam sing sida akoi leirku matam da ne akoi na ranking lom da haigal pang ngudri si aduga iroina na sig indication of some of the renowned world ranking of university da Shanghai gi ranking matung in paba matam moi gi amba mek habu matam sida akoi gi quality education si yeng matam da alumni winning Nobel Prize yaw khraba Fields Medal phangba faculty yaw ba ha bi mi gi develop country de sig level ne gi hongna greba aruga quality of faculty staff winning Nobel Prize yaw ba Fields Medal phangba yaw ben hangna ne ado India gi hogi si akoi am laibuk thiri si before independence the 1930 da CB Raman Nobel Prize phangabu matungda hogi after post independence pau hogi si Nobel Prize puthopung ngamdri masine yam laibuk thiri si aduna sigi anova education policies na weapon oirga akoi holistically national level central level da state ki level da aduga akoi gi individually akoi gi institute me amsin punna khusamna khonra gadi with this yamna phajarba weapon je new weapon hand log jege new education policy sinra gadi one okay gi matam gi matung soina maki akoi awang mathak ta yorokani habagi thajeba si ai lejai aduga times ki higher education gi world ranking da lobu matam da su masida pirisi research income from industry si knowledge transfer is also very important way aduga iroina na international outlook staff students and research akoi to bisi local khakti gi weda United Nations Environment Program gi makhada think globally but act locally have admaina environment ki matang yeng betar so ti isa khak ki swag ki yeng de global gi wakalon da climate change have is global gi wakalon la ko man education have is global gi wakalon se lam mathok tai and very recently last year si National Council for Teacher Education ki silver jubilee da yamna chaw international conference ma Delhi to ge isam su yog dwarka da ko masida pir ba theme che teacher education global local to global hena yam chawna nei ne ge ba adu magi wakalon si mindset singda akoi lemina ba mathok tai have wakalon si thamde ge ai tension jege aduga sumain to dang sa gi laiba akoi quality education gi matang haiba tar ga su mayam am legre si 5 characteristics of excellent teachers na oifum thokpa aduga characteristics of leading international universities excellence am oike haiba tar gi karam makal gi parameter karam da ka oige si excellence in research is always yarni top quality professors favoring working conditions job security adequate facilities and adequate funding is always incorporated or now sumain to da even if we go to the sustainable development goal ki matang da nei never target su ko G8 forum of developed countries in the matang sin su collaboration and cooperation amongst institutes is very important. Tamil Nadu Agriculture University PhD program che akuna collaborate to we Konen University ga adigi asmai to danga sagi atopa khoi gi Manipur da university lehen khalasi akhoi gi university si se Shanghai ga collaborate to ge have natraga atopa akhoi gi Oxford ka to ge sumbi gi akhoi gi international link up to na gi plan che matang to ya gi South Korea ga to ge have natra sin jing ba akhoi international gi oiba inkhalak liba mayam sing se masi ga akhoi collaboration to ya gi si gi wakhalon sing si thamba yam mathok ta have se thamjani adu exchange program haidana invite to ba akhoi gi leijeriba akhoi gi institution na akhoi na mapan gi esteem any field la lejesunu adi education is the universal oiba pot am oiba anywhere masak thokpa scientists even Nobel laureates sing akhoi na kawarga akhoi gi lamdam sida Nobel Prize phangba scientists ma ko Manipuri soil khong tabu matamda something else some change ma angang sing mindset scholars sing mindset oja sing mindset soidam ki lakhne ba sigi exchange program and invitation through conference seminars workshops and a discussion since mo mayam sing akhoi pakai ba yanam mathok tai haibasi ai thamjani aduga close cooperation between universities and industries si de ogi policy su phajana jum yawi ra bane ba ko aduna effective implementation of ICT si su yam important oi haibasi thamjani aduga iroi loibada aina hajani basi masi NEP 2020 is a transformation step in the right direction on a number of fronts. However, any policy is only good as its implementation. Achieving successful implementation of this new education policy 2020 demands a long-term vision, availability of expertise on a sustained basis, and concerted actions from all concerted actors, stakeholders, encompassing national, state, institutional, as well as individual levels. So holistic approach many challenges are yet to be faced and then make the vision a reality. If we could do so, NEP 2020 will help transform India into a global education and superpower as envisioned by our Honorable Prime Minister. to conclude, we really need a truly excellent global university or institute in this part of the region, rooted in the local context, but spreading its fragrance around the world, like a lily rooted in its humdrum pond, but spreading its beauty and fragrance all around far and wide. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor Razmon. We'll again come back to you after this presentation session is over. Next, may I request Dr. L. Biswanath Sharma to kindly give the presentation on motivated, energized, and a capable faculty.
A very good afternoon, everybody. Respected moderator, sir, Professor N. Lukendra, distinguished panelists on the dais, Shri S. Rajan Singh, Honorable Minister of Education, Government of Manipur, respected officials from the Department of Education, and my dear friends. At the outset, I would like to extend my gratitude to the organizers for giving me this opportunity of sharing up some of my thoughts in this panel discussion. So the topic assigned to me is motivation, energized, capable faculty. So this topic is clearly spelled out in the para number 13 of this policy report. So this para, we have 6 sub-paras. So every para spells out what to do with the faculty in order to achieve their goal, in order to achieve the prior goal of this policy. Before coming to this particular topic, I would like to remind the core objectives of this policy. So we have to always remember this core objective, because when we try to implement this policy, we should not neglect the policy, the objectives of this policy. So as far as my understanding is concerned, I think there are 2 important objectives. Number 1, the first objective is the holistic approach for bringing a holistic development in higher education, a comprehensive growth in the higher development, in order to bring a holistic personality, mankind, So that is the objective of the holistic approach, is to create an individual, to create a person who is the integrated human, or a total man, what Marx said. The second objective is, so this new policy is a dramatic change in the history of education policy in India. So it attempts to bring a new education policy to create or to achieve the personality which we want to create. So the aim is we want to break the stereotypic educational systems, the compartmentalization of educational system. So we try to bring this knowledge in one compartment. So we have to break down the world in between science and humanities, in between science and social science, in between the professional education and so on and so forth. So it associates with the concept like multidisciplinary approach. So when we talk about the multidisciplinary approach among our friend circle, many of the peoples, in my understanding, we misinterpret this multidisciplinary, misconception of multidisciplinary. So here, in my understanding, the multidisciplinary does not mean that everybody is free to, of any subject, any discipline. So I would like to draw the attention of the members of the task force. When we design the curriculums of the course, particularly higher degree, so we should forget about the BSc, BA, BCom, and all these things. So we give degree. In this degree, so the subjects are needed to club together. So in order to club the discipline, the different disciplines, so we have to chalk out the interdisciplinary natures. So it doesn't mean that a person who is offering BSc honors in physics, so it doesn't mean that he should offer some course in MBBS. It doesn't mean that. So even the person who offering botany honors, so the area of interdisciplinary areas should be defined. We need to define the interdisciplinary approach. I mean, interdisciplinary areas of study. So here we should remember, just before 2020 policy, we are insisted by the UGC to design the curriculum, the LOCF, Learning Outcome Curriculum Framework. So in the Learning Outcome Curriculum Framework, it is already designed, the multidisciplinary approach. So this new policy cannot be differentiated from the LOCF. So there is a continuity. So we should remember the LOCF framework. So here in the LOCF, we have the core area, which area we have to offer as a core subject, then the generic subject, the discipline specific electives, then enhancement elective course, so on and so forth. So now when come to my topic areas, that is the motivation, then capable of the faculty. As we all know, in educational system, in the educational learning, teaching, learning process, there are two more important components. One is teachers and another is student. So in this teacher-student interaction relationship, we should always remember how do we motivate the students. The teachers is the motivators, so he or she will motivate the students. And now our task is the policies empower us to motivate the motivators. So we have to motivate the motivator. How do we motivate the motivators? How do we educate the educators? This is our task in the implementation of new policy. So in order to explain all these things, I just remind some sub-points in sub-point 13.1, it is just introduction of the motivation and capable, how do we develop the capacity of the faculty. Then point number 13.2, that it concentrate on the facilities, infrastructure facilities, classroom, then the environment of the campus, educational campus, the table, chairs, so on and so forth. And 13.4 talk about the student-teachers ratio. It talks about the responsibility of the teachers. And 13.5, in the 13.5, it talks about the motivation of the teachers, the freedoms of the teachers. And then again, it talks about the efficiency, excellence. So this term, excellence, is need to be defined. How do we define excellence? Excellence of the teachers. And the last point, the institutional leaders. This is very important. So an institution cannot be run without having the dynamic leaders. So I would like to, due to the limitation of time, I will concentrate the one point, how do we motivate the things. So one of the fundamentals, should we say, the freedom of discourse or free dialogue is the fountainhead of the motivation, of all motivation. So we should respect the freedom. We should give the freedom to the student. We should give the freedom to the teachers. So freedom here, freedom to design the curriculum, freedom to impart, freedom to form the new ideas, as well as freedom to impart the ideas, and freedom to teach the students. So we don't need to concentrate on the four-wall classroom. So we may teach the student outside the classroom. We may teach the student in the cafeteria. So there is some scope for the open-mindedness. So we should design the curriculums. So the freedom of designing the curriculum is linked with the core philosophy or core objectives of this policy. Then we should consider the freedom from. So freedom to is one component, another component is the freedom from. So we are all the time, the teachers, faculties in the college, the faculties in the universities, so in the higher studies, so we have a lot of constraints. So these constraints, we have to escape from this constraint. Otherwise, we cannot develop our ability, we cannot develop our motivation. The inspiration to learn new things, the inspiration to teach the new things to the student cannot be achieved if we are constrained, if we have certain constraints. So just like the salary, the promotion, the career progression. So there are a lot of things. So these predicaments in the career of, in the life of the teachers, so should be taken into account of when we try to implement all this policy. So lastly, I would like to put one things. I would like to sum up all these things. So for the motivation, regarding motivation, so a good teacher is one who doesn't require any sort of motivation. He motivates himself. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Biswanath. Next, may I request Dr. Bhaveshwar Tongbram to kindly speak on the theme, IKS languages, culture and values.
Good evening. Ngasigi panel discussion ngasigi President Noviva Honorable Education Minister S. Rajan Singh aduga Koilangsin Biriba Commissioner Higher Education, Commissioner School Education, respected moderator of this technical session, and distinguished panelists, and all the academicians from various institutes and universities, and the invitees. Ngasigi akoigi topic kasigi mangoina na. Thus, I want to quote from the Taittiriya Upanishad about the paradigm shift on education. What from this morning 9:30 to now, Siddha Koina conceptual change, amasung thought process sama change darkar tabra na khanjai. Aduna aina ihan hana Taittiriya Upanishad ki education ga mari laina ba khoi ki slokam katang kotok jage. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Vunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahi Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vit Vishavahi. Aduna akoy na ngasay ayuktagi goy 2 sips mayam singsi akoy ki bombarding of informations sigi mayam singsi akoy ki Indian knowledge system or the Indian education system or Indian knowledge traditions sigi kitang tayo na brana kanje kay no haibadi akoy ki Upanishad sida sigi haribsi Shaha no Vavatu at the education system, the learner and the learned see concepts see teacher and the taught see Indian systems the later Vaitare. Aduna quite the nearest city of Padesni. Aduna Karino Harisi when we start something teaching and learning process, then the teacher and the taught is in the same level. Aduna Siddha Harisi Saha no together, both together have the teacher and the taught she be Vavatu protected, Vunaktu nourish, and be energized, and that brilliance bring together. Aduna Adi say that Ozadusu Takaduriba the learned tusu masu learn togadoribune have. The atmosphere should be that both the learner and the one who is teaching and the taught should be learning together and have. Aduna akoina education sigi concept si kitang thought process si koigi handaki laiba national education policy simakta da akoigi vision statements da yaribasini. Aduna akoina sukhangi Finland huzik global education system gi rankings amasung magi praja sing innovation amasung EQ level sing adukki matik India world gi top talaire. Why kaigino Finland di chahi tram nga kun gi mamangda classroom abolish tawre. There won't be any classroom. There won't be any classroom. Classroom later, kind of classroom later, the activity centers, activity rooms, and like ni have. Aduna, karino activities pull up tominaba. Ozaduga, Satraduga, pull up tominaba, Takadoribaduga, Tamgadoribaduga, pull up tominaba. Aduna, akoigi ihan hanba education policy. Gis chairman of Bikibasar Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan so Habirame.
Akoigi classroom amada satra kuntra lerabadi, the teacher who is coming to teach, he should be the 34th learner. Anahai. Aduna akoina karino akoina tawgadoi se hardi akoina Indian ethos and Indian knowledge systems the karino haitari Swami Vivekananda su haviram by education maramda karino manifestation of the perfection already in man haibani aduna karino akoina akoidi nungde leirabdo panda puthorakpani haba aduna hanagi western education system Macaulay's ki 1835 ki Macaulay's memories about education adugi class of a class of porakna bagi adugumba concept dagi hongdok padune akoigi handaki sahi kuntratrok chupna ngai raba adugumba education policy ama lakpase aduna khwai ihan hana koina tawgadav si paradigm shift on thought process ne akoigi thought process is changed tobuni aduna akoigi Professor Rajmohan nasu panbikhiba adugi akoigi film medals novelists aduga mayamdu karigi akoigi state phangdribano haibdo India da and the ranking system adu amutang pangmada mayamsu khangbiramani Manjul Bhargava, the young scientist who is the third youngest professor at the age of 14 da ma loin loigre ma si Bradford kanosulai adu ma si drop out away ma si Phil medal phanghiba dugumba Indian origin amani ma su mathematics professor amani mana that education system US the like Pazaraba education system the tamba matam he drop out when he researched mana eduk magi masi puzzles samasung mathematics edukimatik pamjevani adubu system do ye kan even the Harvard do not satisfy tongam the mana India the halakan the magi grandfather was a Sanskrit scholar and that Sanskrit scholar dugi mayumda koigi text mayamam le about Madhav na ibiramba aduga Bhaskaracharya amasung Lilavati na iramba adugumba mathematics ki maramda text mayamda puthoga paru matamda he started learning Sanskrit. He started learning the Indian way of education system, learning methods.